You smell different, I said. She paused mid-step. Just a beat. Just long enough to confirm what I already knew. Then she turned, all smiles, fingers brushing through her hair like I just complimented her on a new dress. Oh, it's just a new lotion one of the girls gave me, she said. You know how they are. She kissed the air near my cheek and floated toward the kitchen, her heels clicking like a metronome, too fast, too rehearsed. The roast was already in the oven. My son, Kyle, was finishing up a project at the dining table, earbuds in. My daughter, Becca, was FaceTiming a friend in her room. And me? I was just setting the table for what would be, in hindsight, the last normal dinner in this house. I don't shout. Never did. I ran logistics for 27 years. I handled emergencies with a clipboard and a dry wit. So when your wife walks past you smelling like someone else's cologne, texting with the brightness dialed all the way down, and smirking at a screen she hides under the table, well, you don't grab the phone. You grab a chair. She poured the wine. Too much. Laughed too loud at a meme, then claimed it was from Kara, who I'm pretty sure moved to Seattle a year ago. Her phone never left her palm. At one point, I saw the screen light up. Not the message, just the name. D. Nothing else. Just an initial. She caught me looking and slid the phone under her thigh. Like a teenager. Like a goddamn rookie. So how was everyone's day? I asked. Becca grunted. Kyle didn't hear me. Melissa smiled a little too wide and said, busy. Lot going on at work. Stressful. People need me a lot right now. Yeah, I said, some people do. She blinked. And for just half a second, just one microscopic moment, the smile twitched. Then it was back, solid and sugary. You always say the weirdest things, Frank. After dinner, I did the dishes. She disappeared upstairs with a glass of Chardonnay and the glow of her screen trailing behind her like a scent trail. It was around 10:42 p.m. when I passed the hallway and heard her whispering in the dark, phone to her lips like she was praying. He says I deserve more than this. There was no anger in her voice, just breathy entitlement, like she was reading off a fortune cookie written by a midlife crisis therapist. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there and listened to the sound of someone slowly burning their own house down with a smile. She didn't know I was there, didn't see me, which was fitting, really. Later, I tucked in Kyle. Becca had already fallen asleep on her open laptop. I pulled the blanket over her shoulders, kissed her forehead. Then I went to the garage, not to scream, not to drink, not even to think, just to open a drawer I hadn't touched in over 15 years. A long, narrow drawer marked only with tape and a faded label, Archive. Inside was a box. Old, metal, dent on one corner, combination lock. Still worked. I took it inside, into my study, sat down, opened it. A yellow legal pad, 2 flash drives, a voice recorder, a sealed envelope labeled if needed, and a list, handwritten in my own blocky print, dated 2007. Notes on a past betrayal. Not Melissa's, but someone else's. And suddenly, the stillness I'd felt for weeks snapped into clarity. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be documentation. Melissa thought she had options. Freedom. A fresh chapter. What she didn't realize was that I've spent my entire adult life preparing contingencies for when systems fail. And she had just failed the system. I turned on the desk lamp, picked up the pen. First page. Melissa, 8:11 p.m. Wine, laughter, hidden screen. Name D. Whisper, he says I deserve more. Underline twice. Then I wrote another sentence, slower this time. Just for me. Don't warn. Don't argue. Observe. Collect. Decide. And just like that, the end of our marriage began with the click of a pen. I hadn't been in the basement room since the kids started using it for storage, old science fair posters, half-broken bikes, a bin of Halloween decorations that never made it back up. But behind it all, behind the false drywall panel no one remembered but me, was the door. Key lock. Industrial handle. Just wide enough to keep things out of sight and out of memory. I hadn't needed it in years. That was the point. The key was still where I left it, in a hollowed-out wrench hanging on the garage pegboard. Some guys keep fishing tackle in secret compartments. I keep proof. The lock clicked open like it never stopped waiting. Same stale air. Same slight hum from the old HVAC vent I installed just in case. The room wasn't large, but it was precise. Two safes bolted into opposite corners. One tall filing cabinet. A fireproof case in the middle of the floor, untouched since the day Melissa and I agreed to move forward from a past she never quite knew the full details of. I opened the case. A thin layer of dust greeted me. Inside, a Tascam digital recorder. Still working. Two labeled flash drives, 2011, 2016. One legal pad with my handwriting on the first page. The first word? Insurance. Not the financial kind. The kind you build when you realize love is wonderful, but people are liabilities. I sat down on the old stool and flipped open the pad. My own handwriting stared back, block letters, clean lines. Old details about a former business partner, a woman named Adrian, and how she tried to gut me in a restructuring deal. Notes on how I documented every interaction, how I recorded every threat, how I walked away with the company name, and she walked away with a check and a gag order. Same principles, different betrayal. I rewrote the title page, Melissa, 2024. Then I flipped the recorder on, just to hear the click, just to remind myself it was real. I spoke aloud, low and even. Subject, Melissa. Notice deviation in behavior over past 3 weeks. Abrupt changes in perfume. Increased secrecy around digital devices. Statement recorded at 10:42 p.m. Hallway, he says I deserve more than this. Click. I slid the recorder into the charging port I had built into the drawer 2 decades ago, back when this room was my tech den, before it became a mausoleum of plans I hoped I'd never need again. Then I walked to the tall filing cabinet and opened the second drawer. Pre-filled affidavits and used power of attorney documents, signed releases from old NDAs, legal templates I kept on hand for hypotheticals. Hypotheticals were now current events. By 9:45 a.m., I had started printing out Melissa's recent bank statements. Not from our joint account, she was too clever for that. I found a card once in her coat pocket months ago, one I didn't recognize. Capital One. No matching records under her main email. But she forgot one thing. She used our home Wi-Fi to activate it. Just once. And I had the MAC address saved from when I installed the router firewall myself. So I traced it. Pulled metadata logs. Cross-referenced login locations. Denver. Dallas. Downtown Chicago. Not cities she'd ever mentioned in passing. But they were in her phone search history. She never cleared her cache. She just thought private browsing tabs made her invisible. By noon, I had everything backed up. 2 flash drives. One for my lawyer. One for my safe deposit box. I labeled a new envelope, post-confrontation packet. If things escalate. Because I wasn't planning to scream. I was planning to win. And the thing about planning is, it doesn't make a sound. It just waits. The law office hadn't changed much since the last time I stepped in. Same 2 soft leather chairs, same smell of old books and fresh toner, same brass nameplate on the door. Clifford M. Garrow, Estate and Business Law. But this time, I wasn't here as a husband looking to update college funds. I was here as a man shifting tectonic plates beneath his own marriage. Cliff stood as I walked in, gave me that look, the kind only 2 men who've known each other since high school can share. He'd been my attorney for over 2 decades. He helped set up our first will when Melissa was pregnant with Becca, walked us through buying the house, even sat across from us as we filled out paperwork for the joint trust. But today wasn't a trust maintenance session. It was an extraction operation. You want to walk me through this slowly, Cliff said, pulling his glasses down the bridge of his nose. I slid the folder across the desk. Inside were printouts, Melissa's side account transactions, anonymized hotel charges, and most importantly, her recent attempts to refinance her car behind my back, using our joint credit as leverage. I wasn't just insulted. I was economically insulted. I want the survivorship clause pulled. Effective immediately. He gave me a long stare. Frank, are you sure? You realize. She doesn't die in this story, Cliff. She just walks away with less. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Okay, that we can do. What else? Split the education accounts. Leave the kids' funds intact, but remove her control. Won't she see that in the quarterly statements? Already opted into paperless. She never checks her email, only what's on her app. I'll swap the notification address to my private inbox. He nodded slowly, making notes. Property. I leaned forward. I want to move the house, the cabin in Sawyer, and the land in Henderson into a newly registered LLC, one with a silent owner clause. I'll fund it through the existing real estate holding company, mask the ownership trail through layered operating agreements. He let out a low whistle. Frank, that's quietly ruthless. I looked him dead in the eye. That's quietly fair. Because Melissa didn't just cheat on me. She did it from inside the life I spent 3 decades building. She leveraged my stability to fund her fantasy. And now? She'd get to keep the fantasy. I'd be keeping everything else. Cliff slid a fresh trust amendment form in front of me and started typing. We'll call it Lanning Heritage Holdings LLC. Needs a neutral P.O. box. I already bought one 2 weeks ago. Here's the address. He raised an eyebrow. I didn't smile. This isn't the first time I've been left. Just the first time I'm not leaving anything behind. For the next hour, we walked through the quiet dismantling of a financial identity. One Melissa still believed we shared. We redrafted the medical directives, still showing her as the emergency contact, but with limited override power. We rewrote the life insurance beneficiaries, still with her name listed, but as a percentage, no longer whole. A technicality. But in court, technicalities are architecture. The real coup was the layered delay. Each change was triggered to activate only under specific thresholds, meaning she wouldn't see the shift until it was far too late to undo. When I signed the last document, Cliff looked up and said something that stuck with me more than anything else that day. You're not planning revenge. You're setting a stage. No, I said, capping the pen. I'm building the exit she thinks she'll choose. And then I left the office with a neutral expression, got into my truck, and drove home to make spaghetti for a woman who still thought I was blind. The best part? She kissed me on the cheek that night, said, "You've been really sweet lately. It's kind of refreshing." I smiled. Because legally, I was still the sweet husband. But beneath the mask, I was already gone. She floated the idea over breakfast like it was nothing. Carly and Jen are doing a girls' weekend up at Blue Ridge. Wine, hiking, trashy magazines. You know the drill, she said, barely looking up from her phone. You okay holding down the fort? I nodded, buttered my toast, and sipped my coffee. Sure, I said. Take the break. You deserve it. She paused, half a second too long, then smiled wide, as if the approval shocked her more than the lies she was telling. Thanks, babe. Seriously. I kissed her on the forehead. Just send me a few pictures from the hike, so I know you didn't fall off a mountain. She laughed. Deal. It was a good cover, I'll give her that. 2 women I hadn't seen in years, both recently divorced, both chronically offline. Easy to claim. Impossible to verify. Unless, of course, you knew what you were looking for. I helped her pack, tossed her yoga mat in the back, her weekend bag, and, just before closing the hatchback, reached behind the rear wheel well and slid a magnetic GPS tracker into the metal frame. Not just a phone app, either. A dedicated tracker with live ping and no dependence on her signal. She waved from the driver's seat, blew a kiss, and drove off like she was heading to a spa commercial. I waited 37 minutes, then checked the live feed on my laptop. Highway 29, eastbound. No turns toward the mountains. Another hour. She exited off I-64. Not toward any lakes I knew. Not toward any cabins. She stopped at a valet garage just outside the downtown Hyatt. 5-star, valet only, business clientele. The map stopped updating at Hyatt Richmond Plaza, Lot B. I didn't drive to the hotel. I drove to the office of Cresswell Integrated Security, a firm I used during a vendor audit last year. They handle building surveillance for high-end properties across the region, including hotels, including this one. The receptionist was new, young, and different. But she took my card, looked up the existing vendor record under my old account, and called upstairs. 5 minutes later, I was shaking hands with Warren Cresswell himself. Frank. Damn, it's been a while, he said, gesturing to the seat across his desk. Warren, I need access to camera pulls from the Hyatt, room 1503, timestamp range beginning today at 11:45 a.m. through Sunday morning. He blinked. That your room? No, but it's relevant to a personal matter. He leaned back. Legal? Not yet, but it might be soon. He gave a slow nod, then tapped a few keys on his keyboard. Normally this takes a formal request, but you still have clearance status in our system under the DoD contract. Didn't expire? He smiled faintly. You made sure it wouldn't. 15 minutes later, he slid a flash drive across the desk. Lobby. Elevators. Hallway 15th floor. Everything from this morning until now. I nodded, pocketed the drive, and stood. Your invoice will be paid within the hour. No rush, he said. You always knew how to clean up quietly. Back at home, I waited. Opened the footage. There she was, same coat, same hair, same small overnight bag she claimed she'd packed for a cabin retreat. But this time, she wasn't laughing with Carly or Jen. She was with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, tan, expensive watch. Slick, like a real estate agent trying too hard. He reached for her waist as they exited the elevator. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. They entered room 1503 at 12:23 p.m. The door closed behind them. I paused the video, took a screenshot, labeled it, "Weekend, not with friends." Then I pulled the audio recorder from my desk drawer and hit record. Saturday, 12:31 p.m. Melissa entered room 1503 with unidentified mail. No luggage indicating group trip. No visual confirmation of friends referenced. No contact since departure. I clicked it off. This wasn't evidence of infidelity. Not yet. This was the architecture of betrayal. And I was just mapping the foundation. Melissa thought I was some relic. The soft-spoken dad who grilled burgers and didn't look too hard at things. But that was her first mistake. Because while she was sipping overpriced wine in a robe that wasn't bought for my eyes, I was sitting at home with time, resources, and zero intention of being caught off guard again. By the time she came back Monday morning, I'd already backed up the footage twice. She walked in smiling, humming some garbage pop tune under her breath, kissed me on the cheek like it was just another Monday. I didn't flinch. I just poured her coffee, asked how the hike was, and dropped a single word into the conversation with a shrug. Hope the hotel room wasn't too stuffy. She paused, coffee halfway to her lips, then laughed, too loud, too fast. I what? Oh, nothing, I said. Just read something about Blue Ridge hotels being packed this weekend. Weird, right? She blinked. I smiled. The stage was set. She just hadn't read the script. The house was warm with the smell of roasted garlic and lemon thyme chicken. I'd planned it out 3 days in advance, timed every detail. Becca liked those truffle mashed potatoes from her college days, and Kyle couldn't resist peach cobbler. There were no accidental leftovers this time. No asking, "Do you think Mom will want any?" Because I didn't mention her. Not once. "Dad," Becca said, settling into her old seat at the dining table. "This looks really nice. You good?" I shrugged, carved the chicken with precision. What's not to be good about? I've got 2 grown kids in one place. That's rarer than a solar eclipse these days. Kyle chuckled, grabbing a leg. Seriously, though, you're doing the whole chef thing now? Been brushing up, I said. Therapeutic. You'd be amazed what you can learn when you stop wasting your time trying to fix things that don't want fixing. They both looked up at that, just a flicker of confusion. I pivoted immediately, sliding the dish across the table. Eat before it gets cold. We talked for 2 hours. Caught up on Becca's job hunt, Kyle's new apartment. Laughed about an old video of Kyle falling into the lake when he was 9. I pulled it up on my phone and cast it to the TV. Melissa's laugh wasn't in the background. Her face wasn't in the frame. That omission didn't feel accidental anymore. Around dessert, I leaned back in my chair and cleared my throat. There's something I wanted to run by you both, I said. Becca raised an eyebrow. Oh, not bad, I smiled. Just thinking about picking up a small cabin. Nothing huge. A-frame style. Few hours outside the city. Quiet. Simple. Kyle perked up. Like the one we used to go to in Henderson? Same vibe, I nodded. But this one would be newer. Better insulation. Full-time generator. Thought maybe it'd be nice for holidays. You too, your future families someday. Getaways. You know. Becca lit up. That sounds amazing. Kyle was already scrolling through listings on his phone. Where at? I slid a few printed photos across the table. Professional shots. Golden hour. Autumn leaves. Fire pit out back. Clean. Remote. Untouched. Becca picked one up. Dad, this is beautiful. Like, really beautiful. It's perfect, I said. Only thing is, it'll be under my name. Sole owner. Just for tax reasons. The words slipped in like a dropped stitch in an otherwise perfect sweater. They didn't question it. Not then. Not out loud. But they both heard it. Not our name. Not the family's name. Mine. Soul. Melissa's name didn't come up once that evening. No one asked where she was. Maybe they already knew not to. Maybe they didn't want to invite tension into something that finally felt easy. That was the key. Let them feel the shift as a gentle breeze, not a storm. Let them lean toward me because I was warm and steady and still there, not because I told them who wasn't. After they left, hugs at the door, promises to visit again soon. I stood at the sink, running hot water over empty plates. Melissa texted at 11:14 p.m. Flight got delayed. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. No reply. Because by that point, she wasn't the only one quietly rewriting the family narrative. She just hadn't noticed that her chapter was being skipped. And I was already writing a new one where her name never even makes the title page. She came through the door like a sitcom wife returning from a shopping spree, coat slung over one arm, cheeks flushed with cold and self-satisfaction. Her suitcase bumped against the entryway tile with that careless thud that used to mean, I missed you. Now it just meant, I assume nothing's changed. God, I needed that weekend, she said, tossing her keys onto the counter like she still lived in the center of this universe. Carly and Jen say hi, by the way. I nodded from the kitchen, where I was peeling an apple with surgical focus. Good to know they're still alive, I said without looking up. She hesitated a moment. That smile she wore so easily, it faltered. But only slightly. Then it was back. That smug glow people get when they believe they've pulled something off and you're too stupid to notice. I'm gonna shower, she called over her shoulder, heading upstairs like this was any other Sunday. It wasn't. That morning, while she was still at brunch pretending she liked mimosas, I'd been sipping black coffee across from her father. Robert Maddox, retired colonel, Vietnam vet, conservative as hell, and the kind of man who could dismantle a rifle blindfolded but couldn't open a PDF. He never liked me much at first. Said I smiled too easily for a man with responsibility. But over time, he respected my consistency. Said I didn't rattle. That morning, we met at his country club's back patio. Private. Heated. Quiet. He looked older than I remembered, like time had finally stopped negotiating with him. Appreciate you meeting me, I said. He waved it off. Melissa called last week. Something about adjusting the deed. Said you were fine with it? I didn't reply. Just placed a folder on the table. He opened it. Inside, 3 copies of the current deed, property title, and a printed message thread between Melissa and a mortgage officer from 3 months ago, where she'd asked about cashing out equity from the house. Without my name involved. Robert didn't speak for a full minute. Then he sighed. Deep. Heavy. You know, he said, I used to think she was like her mother. Turns out she's more like me. Only worse, because she lies to win small. He took another sip of his coffee and looked out at the empty golf course. I gave her this house as a wedding gift. You remember that? I do. I kept your name on it because you showed up. You always showed up. Quiet. Reliable. Hell, maybe boring. But boring pays the bills. I waited. Let the silence sit. Then he said it. Soft, but like a knife being set gently on the table. She's been writing her own consequences for years, Frank. Maybe it's time she finally reads them. I didn't smile. Didn't nod. I just folded the folder back up and slid it back into my coat. I'm not taking her to court, Robert. I'm just removing the stage. He looked at me with something that wasn't quite pity. Wasn't quite approval. Just understanding. Back at home, Melissa came down from her shower wearing a robe I hadn't seen in years. It clung in all the ways she knew would get her attention. Maybe that was the plan. She opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of wine. No dinner plans tonight? I shook my head. I ate earlier. Meeting ran late. She tilted her head. With who? I looked at her. Held it. Your father. Her hand froze on the cork. Oh. He says hi. She tried to smile, but her mouth twitched too hard. What about? Nothing important. Just property. Inheritance. You know. Boring stuff. That was the moment her eyes flinched. Not her face, just the eyes. Like a wire behind them had shorted for half a second. She took the wine and left the room. I watched her walk away. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was about removing her illusions, piece by piece. Not to punish, but to reveal. Because when someone's been building their house on sand, Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let the tide roll in and let them see what was never real to begin with. It started with small things, like the thermostat being set 2 degrees colder than she liked it. Then the pantry reorganized without her input. Her almond milk, gone. Replaced with whole. Little things. Inconveniences. But not accidents. Melissa came downstairs Tuesday morning in a blouse that looked like she tried too hard. Her makeup was too sharp, too precise for someone who'd just be working from home. I was at the table, reading. Actual paper. Newspaper. Obsolete, sure, but effective when you want to send a message. I don't need a screen to ignore you. She hovered near the counter, drumming her fingers on the granite like a wind-up doll waiting for a pull-string conversation. I didn't offer one. You're awfully quiet lately, she said, pouring coffee that I'd already brewed for myself and no one else. Guess I've just had a lot on my mind, I said without looking up. She waited. Silence. I know we've both been busy, she offered. Maybe we should talk. Just us. I folded the paper, stood, rinsed my mug in the sink, and walked past her. Upstairs. No door slam. No words. Just absence. She followed me once. Called out a soft, frank, like we were in a Hallmark movie, like we were something fixable. I didn't turn around. Just kept walking. The door shut behind me was enough. That night, I took dinner alone in my study. She stood in the doorway holding a plate like an offering. I gestured to the empty tray beside me. I'm full. Frank, what are you doing? She asked, not angry yet, just confused. Like the script had been changed and she didn't get the revised pages. I'm creating distance, I said. She blinked, like I'd spoken in a language she never learned. From what? From expectation. She didn't have a response to that. Instead, the next day she texted. 9:47 a.m., can we talk later? Read. 1:12 p.m., please don't shut me out. I just want to fix this. Read. 3:06 p.m., are you seeing someone? Just be honest. Read. 6:39 p.m., Frank, what is going on? Nothing. No reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because silence was now my weapon of choice, and she was starting to bleed. Thursday, she tried calling. I watched it buzz across the kitchen island. 5 rings. Voicemail. Buzzed again. And again. Finally, I answered, but said nothing. Frank. Her voice was shaky. Are you there? I let the silence sit. Long enough for her to hear it wasn't a glitch. Then I hung up. By Friday, she was unraveling. She made my favorite breakfast, bacon, scrambled eggs, rye toast with that bitter marmalade I pretend to like. She set it in front of me. I nodded. Thanks. That was it. Can you just tell me what you want? She asked, voice cracking like porcelain. I stood, took the plate to the sink. Don't do that, she said. Don't pretend this is normal. Say something. Yell. Accuse me. Just don't disappear like this. I turned, dried my hands on the towel. You think this is disappearing? I said, voice calm, cool, clean. This is the opposite. This is you finally being seen without the buffer. The buffer. All the noise. All the bullshit. The fake apologies. The way you used to cry when you were caught, just long enough for me to feel guilty. That's gone now. This is you. Unfiltered. And me? I'm watching. She didn't cry this time. She just stared. Pale. Silent. And for the first time since her lake trip, I saw it. She wasn't confused. She was terrified. Not of me, but of the void I'd become. Because people like Melissa don't fear anger. They fear irrelevance. And I was making her irrelevant with every unread message, every ignored call, every measured word dropped only in the presence of our children. I didn't slam doors. I didn't throw plates. I didn't even raise my voice. I erased her slowly, methodically, until she was talking to a man she could no longer find inside the body she once controlled. And the most haunting part? She was still living in the same house. But she was already alone. She almost didn't come. I gave her the address 2 days in advance, said it was a financial check-in with Harold, our longtime advisor. She hesitated, asked if we could just talk at home. I told her the paperwork wasn't at home. She assumed this was a peace offering. That's what narcissists do when you stop reacting. They assume the silence was a delay, not a decision. So she showed up that Friday in her best apology outfit. Neutral tones, soft makeup, heels that said I didn't try too hard, but definitely did. She even brought her old leather planner, the one she dusts off when she wants to look like a grown-up. I was already seated in the conference room when she walked in. Harold wasn't there. Only 2 chairs, a pitcher of water, and a flat screen on the wall, paused on a black and white image of a hotel hallway. Dated. Time-stamped. Familiar. She stopped mid-step. Where's Harold? I gestured to the chair opposite me. Sit down. She stayed standing. What is this? I clicked play. The footage rolled silently. There she was, walking down the hallway, laughing, hair bouncing with each confident step. Next to her, him, the same man from room 1503, his hand on her lower back like it had always belonged there. She didn't look at me. Not yet. The next clip, them kissing outside the elevator. Not desperate. Not drunk. Routine. I paused it. Would you like to explain, or would you like me to narrate? I asked. She finally sat. Slowly, like her knees had forgotten how to bend. Frank, I slid the manila envelope across the table. Thicker than it looked. Inside, full divorce documents. Signed by me. Witnessed. Dated. Financial disclosures. Asset transfers already executed. Custody plan, should it come to that, even though the kids were grown. She stared at it like it might bite her. You can't do this, she whispered. I took a sip of water. I already did. But Frank, please. Don't you think we should talk? I don't talk to liars. I document them. She opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanned the top page. Then the next. Then the rest. Her breath hitched when she saw the trust revisions. Her jaw locked when she saw the LLC transfers. You're leaving me with nothing. No, I said. You brought nothing to this table. I'm just letting you walk away with what's yours. Frank, we can fix this. No, Melissa. You could have fixed it. Years ago, when I asked you if something was wrong. When I offered therapy. When I noticed you started going out late and wearing perfume no one in this house ever complimented. She looked like she might cry, so I leaned in. Calm. I see. Don't insult either of us by crying now. She swallowed hard. I didn't think you'd do this. That's the mistake everyone makes with quiet men, I said, standing. They think silence means surrender. I paused by the door. Look back once. The meeting's over. The next time we speak will be through attorneys. If you want to contest anything in the envelope, feel free. But you'll be using your own money now. Her mouth opened. Closed. No sound. She stayed in that chair as I walked away. Frozen. Because for the first time in our entire marriage, she wasn't in control of the room. I was. And I hadn't raised my voice once. She stood in the foyer with her arms crossed, lips pressed thin, wearing that smug little smile she always used when she thought she'd found a loophole. This is my house too, she said. You can't just force me out. She was still in leggings and a hoodie, pretending this was just another casual Tuesday. As if the manila envelope, the signed dissolution, and the silent avalanche of filings hadn't already buried her. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. At 10:03 a.m., the sheriff's cruiser pulled into the driveway. 2 deputies. Calm, efficient, polite in the way that only comes when all the paperwork is in perfect order, and they've done this 100 times before. Melissa's smile vanished. Wait, what the hell is this? She asked, voice climbing an octave. One of the deputies approached, nodded to me, then turned to her with practiced sympathy. Ma'am, we're here to execute a lawful transfer of property. This residence is no longer jointly owned. You've been served with notice. You had 14 days. Her eyes shot to me. You knew they were coming? I met her gaze. Steady. They've been scheduled for weeks. I just didn't feel the need to give you a countdown. She laughed, but it was brittle. You're seriously doing this? Frank, we built this house together. No, I said, folding my arms. I built it. You spent your weekends in hotel rooms, finding yourself. One of the deputies moved past us, quietly cataloging her personal items. He held up a labeled box. Ma'am, if you'd like to collect essential belongings, we can give you 20 minutes. After that, we'll need to change the locks. Melissa looked around like the walls were going to come to life and defend her. Like the memories etched into the drywall would stand up and testify on her behalf. But all she found was stillness. No friends showed up. The group chat she once buzzed with had gone quiet. People don't rally behind a cheater once the receipts are public. And the family? Becca hadn't called in days. Kyle responded to her last message with a single-word reply. Ask Dad. Because they knew. They saw it in her eyes now, the desperation, the cracks in the performance. And they saw me not as a victim, not as a broken man, but as the one who remained, who showed up, who didn't leave. They called my new condo Dad's place, like it had always existed, like they had always preferred its calm, its order, its lack of drama. Melissa stood by the staircase now, clutching a box of jewelry and paperwork like it could anchor her to something real. "I have nowhere to go," she said, voice small. "You had options," I said. "You just traded them for flattery and weekends." The locksmith pulled into the driveway. Right on cue. She tried one more time, looking at me, not with anger now, but something worse, disbelief that this was her life now. "You're actually going through with it." "I already did," I replied. "This is just logistics." She walked past me, down the steps and into the chilly morning. Didn't look back. And for the first time, I didn't watch her go. I just turned to the deputy and said, "Front lock. Back door. All new keys." Then I walked through the house she used to parade in, manipulate in, betray in, and opened every window. Let the cold in. Let the staleness out. Let her scent finally fade. Because this wasn't her house anymore. It was never hers to begin with. She just borrowed the walls while I built the foundation. The lilacs were in bloom again. That was the first thing she noticed as she slowed her car in front of the house she used to call hers. The hedges had been trimmed. The siding cleaned. The sagging porch light she always said she'd get around to replacing was now a modern brass fixture that flickered gently in the evening light. And the mailbox, the one they had painted together their first spring in the house, was gone. In its place stood a black, minimalist box, engraved in clean, matte letters. F. Lanning and Sons. Her heart stuttered. The "and Sons" burned. Not just because it excluded her, but because it confirmed what she'd tried to ignore for months. The kids had chosen weekends with him, dinners at his new place, laughter that no longer needed her presence to exist. The family had quietly reassembled without her. She parked down the block, engine idling. Through the window, she could see the kitchen glowing golden with light. Frank stood at the counter, Becca beside him, stirring something in a pan. Kyle was at the table, leaning back, laughing at something on his phone. The dog, her dog, lay curled up under the table, head resting against Frank's foot. No tension, no awkward pauses. Just a scene that should have included her. Could have, if she hadn't underestimated him. He looked different now. Not younger, not harder, just lighter. Like the weight of carrying someone else's disappointment had finally been put down. Melissa reached for her phone, opened her messages. Blocked. She opened her backup number. Same result. She tried his email, dead link. The last message she'd sent weeks ago still read, unread. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the text box. What could she say now? "I'm sorry. He didn't need it. I didn't mean to." He'd already learned she always meant it. Instead, she opened the camera and snapped a photo of the house. Just one. No caption. A ghost collecting proof that she'd ever lived inside those walls. She lowered the phone and watched for a moment longer. Then Becca looked up. Through the window. Eyes met. No smile. Just calm recognition. Then Becca turned back to the stove like nothing happened. Melissa sat frozen in her car, headlights still off, fingers gripping the wheel. This wasn't a punishment. That was the part that gutted her. There was no rage. No revenge. Frank hadn't destroyed her. He'd simply removed her. Quietly. Thoroughly. Permanently. The rest of her life. The one she thought she'd fall back into after the affair passed, after the apology tour, after the tears, was already moving on. Moving forward. And it didn't have a place for her anymore. It had a new name. Etched in brass. Just above the blooming lilacs. The sound of the screwdriver slipping across the warped metal track echoed sharper than it should have. He clenched his jaw, letting the drawer fall back with a dull thud. It was the same drawer his son had yanked off its rail years ago after slamming it in a teenage tantrum, something about not getting the new iPhone. He'd fixed it then, like always. Quietly, without a word. Like a damned janitor in his own life. Then came the voice. Through the cracked garage window, barely muffled by the late spring breeze. "Mom's new husband makes triple what Dad ever did. He's a loser." The word loser didn't come with anger. No, that would have been easier to stomach. This was said with that teenage scoff, laced in apathy. Like he wasn't even worth being angry at anymore. Like he was an afterthought. He froze mid-movement, hands still gripping the edge of the drawer. His knuckles didn't turn white. He didn't shake. Just still. The boy wasn't talking to him. He was talking to someone on his headset. Probably that smug gaming circle where sarcasm was currency and betrayal was a punchline. The casualness of it made it worse. Like it had been said before. Like he had been measured, compared, and discarded a dozen times already. He stood. Not quickly. Not in a dramatic flurry. Just stood. Walked past the bikes. Past the golf bag he hadn't touched since the divorce. Up the stairs. His ex had always said he lacked ambition. That Alan, her new husband, had vision. Translation, Alan leased a Tesla and wore loafers without socks. Big vision, apparently. At his desk, he opened the laptop. No distractions. No need to scroll through old photos or ponder the what-ifs. He logged directly into the state-sponsored 529 college account. Custodial holder. Him. Just like always. Set up when the boy was 9. $300 a month auto-drafted for years. Even during the layoffs. Even when his roof started leaking, and he patched it himself to avoid dipping into that fund. He clicked withdraw. The platform offered a polite warning. Are you sure? This may incur tax penalties. He clicked yes. 10 minutes later, a second window confirmed the funds had cleared back to his primary account. He didn't smile. Didn't lean back in triumph. Just minimized the window and sat. Somewhere behind him, the old grandfather clock ticked. Tick, tick, tick. Like a pulse. But he felt none. He didn't tell anyone. Not even the boy. Especially not the boy. Dinner that night was leftover lasagna. He didn't taste it. He watched a rerun of Frasier on mute. That was the cruelest part of all this. He wasn't even angry. Not really. Just empty. Like the final click in a vault locking shut. At 2:13 a.m., he stared at the ceiling. A water stain above the fan shaped like Florida kept pulling his eyes. He thought about how much tuition costs now. He thought about how Alan probably had a college counselor on speed dial. He thought about the years he'd traded, vacations, raises, peace of mind, all in the name of being a present father. A present, apparently, that no one had wanted. His phone buzzed once, an ad from Best Buy. He turned it face down. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Inside, something had shifted. He wasn't hurt. He was done. And they didn't know it yet. But that silence? It was the sound of every domino starting to fall. She smirked as she poured another glass of Cabernet across the glossy kitchen island. Her third, maybe fourth, it didn't matter. Dana always flourished under artificial lighting and forced laughter, and tonight's dinner with their neighbors was no different. Except this time, there was a new trophy sitting next to her, Alan. And across the table, their son, Ryan, was retelling some story about Alan helping him with a college prep spreadsheet, calling him dad like it wasn't a loaded word. Dana didn't correct him. She never did. Why would she? It played better that way. He just couldn't handle the pressure. She whispered to the woman beside her, giggling behind a polished wine glass. The whole provider thing crushed him. Alan's been a breath of fresh air. Everyone nodded the way polite guests do. No one questioned where the first man had gone, or why the son's real father wasn't around anymore. Everyone just accepted the vacuum, the sanitized replacement, the clean version of events. But then Dana's phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. 603 area code. New Hampshire? She silenced it and went back to her monologue about ski condos and retirement goals. 2 hours later, after the dishes had been put away and Ryan was upstairs blasting music through his overpriced gaming rig, Dana checked again. Another missed call. Same number. And a voicemail. She pressed play. This is Nancy Wexler from Hawthorne and Associates. We've been trying to reach you regarding an account under the J&R Trust, which has recently been flagged for custodial review. Please call us back immediately. She deleted it without listening to the end. The J&R Trust. That was supposed to be dead. It was something she and her ex set up during their better years, mostly to hold a property in Weller Creek that never sold. When they divorced, she thought the paperwork had been split, buried under settlement clauses and tax jargon. She never looked twice. But now it was flagged, reviewed, and someone was calling her about it. She walked upstairs to ask Alan. He was in his office, still wearing his dress shirt, tie loosened in that way he thought made him look important. She handed him the phone and watched the way his mouth tensed as he played the voicemail again. "Isn't this just some tax thing?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened his laptop and began digging through a folder labeled Joint Accounts, Dana. It was a folder she didn't know he had. A few clicks later, he looked up. "Did your ex ever formally release you from custodial claims on the Weller property?" "What?" Her brow furrowed. "I thought the divorce handled that." He shook his head. "The deed still lists the trust. And your name's on the trust. But so is his." There was a pause. The air between them felt suddenly clinical. She waved it off. "It's just a technicality. Probably a paperwork glitch." He didn't argue, but his hands didn't leave the keyboard either. The next morning, Ryan slammed a bowl of cereal down, complaining that his college application portal wouldn't let him log in. "It says financial documents missing. FAFSA's blank." "What the hell?" Dana blinked. "That's weird. I'll check with the school." But when she tried to reset the login, the system told her she didn't have access. Alan came downstairs 15 minutes later, holding a printed statement. His face was unreadable. "Why's the Weller Creek trust frozen?" Dana just stared at him. "You checked that this morning?" "No," he said flatly. "It froze last week." That was when the second call came. This one from a blocked number. No voicemail. She didn't know it yet, but the quiet unraveling had begun. Every buttoned-up lie she'd sold to her neighbors. Every polished story about Alan being a real provider. Every smug jab she'd made about her ex being obsolete. They'd all been made on borrowed ground. And that ground was starting to split. Alan walked into Cassandra Levine's office like a man who owned the pavement. Same smug grin, same tailored jacket too tight around the arms, compensating for muscles he didn't have and stress he wouldn't admit. The receptionist smiled nervously, recognizing him from last year's Christmas bottle drop, and buzzed the accountant without a word. 10 minutes later, Cassandra sat across from him, glasses low on her nose, tapping keys with the kind of restraint that screamed, "I know you're full of it, but I'm paid to smile." Alan leaned back. "So, we've got some hiccups. My stepson's FAFSA isn't showing the parent contribution. Dana's locked out of the account. We've got colleges breathing down our necks, and it's all, frankly, just looking like a clerical mess. Can you clean it up?" Cassandra didn't answer. She just kept typing. He cleared his throat. "I'm guessing something on your end changed?" Still nothing. Then her face stilled. She pulled her glasses off, folded them neatly, and placed them on the desk like she was about to read him his last rites. "You're not on the custodial accounts," she said flatly. Alan blinked. "I know that. Dana's ex-husband is. But she's the biological parent. That still gives her access." "No," Cassandra said, sliding the monitor so he could see the screen. "It doesn't. Not anymore." She pointed to a timestamp. 2 weeks ago, he revoked shared custodianship. And because the fund was set up under his name, under his SSN, and was never legally transferred after the divorce, he had every right. Alan laughed once. A nervous puff of disbelief. "That's not even legal. He can't just pull money like that." She turned the monitor back. "He didn't pull the money. He moved it. From the 529 to a private educational trust. One he controls solely. One that's not connected to your household in any way." Alan's mouth opened, then shut. His jaw clicked. Cassandra didn't blink. "And while we're on the subject," she added, now casually flipping through a manila file, "he also rescinded his authorization on the tax-deferred benefits Dana was claiming under their former joint filings. Retroactively. The IRS accepted it." "This is a joke," Alan hissed, standing abruptly. "You're telling me this ghost, this irrelevant, washed-up substitute teacher, has access to more of this kid's financial leverage than we do?" Cassandra raised an eyebrow. Apparently, he was a systems analyst at Fairhaven Utilities. He wasn't washed up. He retired early. Alan didn't respond. He was already halfway to the door. By the time he reached the car, his shirt was sticking to his back. His ears burned, and his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 3 missed calls from Dana. 2 text messages from Ryan. "Mom says there's a FAFSA issue. Should I panic? You said we'd tour Chicago next week. Is that still on?" Alan didn't reply. When he finally walked into the kitchen that evening, Dana was chopping red peppers like they'd insulted her personally. She didn't look up. "Did you talk to Cassandra?" Alan poured himself a drink before answering. It's gone. Dana turned. What do you mean gone? Gone, he said again, slower. As in transferred, revoked, locked down, and airtight. Your ex knew exactly what he was doing. She dropped the knife. It hit the counter with a sick little thunk. Upstairs, they heard Ryan yelling into his headset, still unaware, still oblivious. 30 minutes later, as the family sat in brittle silence pretending to care about overcooked pasta, Ryan stirred his food once and looked up. So when are we doing the campus tour? Dana's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Alan stared at his wine glass. Nobody answered. Ryan waited, then snorted and went back to his plate, muttering something about boomer drama. But in that moment, Alan understood something Dana didn't. This wasn't about a college fund. This was a checkmate move. And they had no idea what board they were playing on anymore. Tuesday started the same way as any other, Alan checking emails while Dana argued with the smart speaker because it wouldn't play her version of a meditation track. The irony was lost on both of them. At 10:42 a.m., a black Lexus sedan with no markings pulled up to their driveway. A man in a gray windbreaker stepped out, carrying a slim envelope in one gloved hand. He didn't knock. He rang the bell and waited precisely 10 seconds. When Alan answered, the man gave a nod and extended the envelope without a word. Alan Bishop? Yeah, you've been served. He didn't wait for acknowledgement. He just turned and walked away like a man who knew how the story ends. Alan stared at the envelope in his hands. It was cream-colored, expensive-looking. Not the kind of thing you throw out with junk mail. He ripped it open at the seam with his thumb and unfolded the pages inside. There were 3 documents. The top sheet bore the letterhead of a firm he didn't recognize, Rutherford, Mays, and Calder LLP. The language was dense, the font intentionally tiny, like it was ashamed of what it was about to do. He scanned the first paragraph. This correspondence constitutes formal notice of an impending challenge to the validity of a secured loan taken under the assumption of sole ownership of collateral, namely the property listed under the Weller Creek Parcel Trust. Alan's breath caught. The Weller Creek House. The damn trust. His name was there, his signature. On a refinance agreement he'd executed 6 months ago to fund his side project, a luxury cabin development he'd been bragging about at every club meeting since March. The loan had gone through cleanly. The property had appraised high. No red flags. Until now. The letter continued. Said property retains dual historical custodianship originating from a marital trust, JNR Trust, never fully dissolved. At the time of your loan, legal ownership was incomplete and pending custodial release from the former spouse of the current trustee, Dana Bishop, formerly Dana Rhodes. Translation: he had taken a loan using collateral that wasn't entirely hers to sign over. Meaning it wasn't entirely his to borrow against. Meaning everything he built on top of that loan was standing on a legal landmine. He dropped the papers on the counter and stormed into the living room. Dana. She appeared from the hallway, still in her yoga pants, AirPods in. What? Did you ever sign a full custodial release on the Weller Creek Trust? She blinked, genuinely confused. I told you, we split that in the divorce. No. Did you sign a full custodial release? Something that says your ex relinquished all future claim to the property. She crossed her arms. Why does it matter? We've already. Why does it matter? He echoed, half laughing, half deranged. Because I just got served with a legal notice from his lawyer. Because the loan I took, is now being challenged as fraudulent. Because the property is still partially his, Dana. She bit her lip. He never said he needed anything signed. Oh, I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he just sat back, waited for me to put my foot on the landmine, and smiled when I did it. Alan picked up the letter again. His hands were trembling now, not from fear, but rage. Not the loud kind. The cold kind that creeps in when you realize someone else has been writing your story in pen while you were using pencil. On the second page of the notice, a single line stood out. Plaintiff seeks remedy in the form of lien revocation and restitution for unauthorized equity usage. Restitution. He knew what that meant. It meant the cabins were now exposed. It meant the construction firm was on the hook. It meant he might owe back not just the loan, but the gains from the investment. Dana was pale now, watching him as if seeing something new in him. Or rather, something old unraveling. I thought you were careful, she whispered. He looked up, eyes burning. I was. Until I trusted you. Silence settled like dust on their marble countertops. The envelope sat between them, heavy as a confession. What Alan didn't know, what Dana hadn't dared to admit even to herself, was that she had received something to sign. Years ago, a packet marked custodial dissolution agreement. She'd stuffed it in a drawer and forgotten it. Back when she still thought her ex was bluffing. He wasn't. And now, neither was his lawyer. The Rotary Club luncheon was supposed to be Alan's victory lap. The firm had just secured the municipal contract for the Hawthorne Recreation Complex, a six-figure handshake from the city wrapped in ribbon-cutting photos and ego inflation. He wore his navy suit, the one tailored just tight enough to suggest fitness without actual exercise, and his teeth had never looked whiter. He even rehearsed the toast the night before, complete with the line about building not just structures, but futures. It killed in the mirror. The ballroom was filled with local developers, mid-level officials, and the kind of desperate handshakers who couldn't afford to order the wine but always reached for it first. Alan was in his element, laughing too loud, slapping backs, telling the story again about how he scaled up from one crew to a full operation with just vision and grit. Dana beamed beside him, her champagne held delicately between nails the color of ambition. Then came the question. It happened fast. One moment he was mid-sentence, bragging about lumber prices, and the next, a voice from his left. Alan Bishop, right? Are you involved in the pending civil claim tied to the Weller Creek collateral filing on the Hawthorne bid? The room hushed, not instantly, but with the slow, crawling silence of people pretending not to listen while actually hanging on every syllable. Alan turned. The man who asked wasn't city staff. He was younger, in his 30s, unbuttoned collar, no tie. The type that didn't belong to the club, but always showed up to write about it. Press badge. Local paper. Alan chuckled, trying to push it off. Excuse me. The reporter didn't smile. There's been a claim filed with the county challenging the legitimacy of the property listed as equity collateral for the Hawthorne bid. Your firm used that as security. Is it true the title's under legal dispute? Alan's throat dried like cotton. Behind him, someone's fork clinked against porcelain. He straightened his jacket. That's a ridiculous, excuse me, an unfounded question. If you have something official, send it to my office. But the damage was done. The room had already shifted. The sponsors he'd spent the last year buttering up, the councilman with the sagging jowls, the bank rep from County West, they were watching now. Whispers started at the far table and rippled like a grease spill across white linen. Dana leaned in, her voice tight. Did he leak this? Alan didn't answer. He couldn't. His ears were ringing. He excused himself to the restroom, but when he reached the hallway, he kept walking. Past the buffet, past the coat check, straight out the door into the parking lot, where he finally exhaled like a man who just realized the floorboards beneath his house weren't creaking, they were splitting. Dana followed 10 minutes later, heels clacking like gunshots. She barely got the car door shut before dialing. Her ex's number. Voicemail. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. The third time, she left a message. Listen, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this has gone too far. Ryan's the one who's going to suffer, not us. Just call me. We can fix this. No response. Back at the luncheon, the word fraud was starting to get thrown around. Not loudly, not officially. Just enough to float into the next room and stick to people's cuffs like static. By 4 p.m., Alan had 3 voicemails of his own. One from his firm's legal consultant, one from the city planning office, and one, most ominously, from Councilman Dorsey's assistant asking for clarity on the Hawthorne contract's documentation. He poured a scotch when he got home. Dana didn't speak. She sat in the corner of the kitchen, scrolling endlessly through old emails, old documents, looking for something that could undo this mess. But it wasn't a mess. It was a trap. And the man who said it was still invisible, still quiet, but very much in control. He shelved books like they were bricks in a wall, one thin paperback at a time, building something that didn't need applause. The library sat in a sleepy town nobody bragged about on LinkedIn, tucked behind a feed store and a diner with real coffee, not that oat milk vanilla foam nonsense his son once mocked him for refusing to try. Nobody here called him a loser. They called him Mr. Ray, and they said it with warmth. Respect. Quiet reverence for a man who showed up when he didn't have to. He volunteered Tuesdays and Thursdays, helped 7th graders prep for algebra tests, fixed a desktop computer that kept freezing, ran a Saturday chess club that had grown from 3 awkward kids to 12 sharp ones who now beat him more often than not. He didn't bring up the lawsuit, didn't talk about Dana, didn't even say Alan's name. But every evening, after closing time, he'd stop by the little mailbox just outside town, a P.O. box with no forwarding address. And there, once a week, like clockwork, he found a manila envelope. Inside, updates from Patricia Strauss, ESQ. Patricia wasn't loud. Patricia wasn't flashy. Patricia was meticulous. A legal scalpel, not a hammer. She wasn't interested in theater. She was interested in blood. And she found it. The latest envelope contained 3 pages of evidence. Alan had claimed a $42,000 donation to a veterans housing project last year. A project that did exist, but Alan's name wasn't on any of the donor lists. Worse, the supposed donation was used as a deduction on both personal and business tax filings. Patricia cross-referenced the IRS return with state filings. They didn't match. The difference? $11,700 owed to the state. Another $6,800 federally. Add interest. Add penalties. Add intent. That was where it got ugly. Patricia's sticky note on the last page was short. Want me to forward this to the audit office or wait for the deposition? Your call. He smiled at that. Patricia always gave him the choice. She knew he wasn't in a rush. The damage wasn't in the speed. It was in the erosion. Slow, steady, surgical. He placed the file in a locked drawer inside his modest apartment. No luxury watches. No Tesla in the driveway. Just a quiet desk, a half-dead succulent, and a laptop wallpaper of a cabin by a lake no one else cared about. At 7:10 p.m., his phone buzzed. A text. Not from his son. Never from his son. This one was from a number he didn't recognize, but he knew immediately where it came from. Are you the one pushing this lawsuit? Please. We can talk. Don't do this to Ryan. No punctuation. No courage. Just Dana's style all over it. He didn't reply. Instead, he got up and returned to the library annex, where 2 kids were still arguing over a chessboard, refusing to go home. Mr. Ray, one of them said, if you take someone's pawn but lose your queen next move, was it worth it? He smiled, pulling up a chair. Depends, he said, moving a knight. Did you see it coming? Back in the city, Alan was still unraveling. And he hadn't even realized yet, he'd already lost his queen. The email came at 3:14 p.m. Subject, Application Update, University of Chicago. He clicked it fast, heart pounding. His hands already half reaching for a celebratory text to his girlfriend. We regret to inform you. The words blurred after that. Ryan stared at the screen, blinked, scrolled again. It didn't say waitlisted. It didn't say deferred. It said no. The rejection shouldn't have come yet. It was early. He was a legacy through Dana's grandfather. His SATs were top 10%. He'd done the community leadership camp. He even fake smiled through the Rotary Club photos with Alan. It was supposed to be a lock. And yet, due to incomplete financial documentation, your application could not be considered for need-based review. His phone nearly cracked when he slammed it onto the kitchen counter. Dana turned from the sink, startled. Ryan, there's no FAFSA info, he snapped. No parent contribution on file. Did you forget something? She looked confused, then panicked, then fake calm. The shuffle of someone trying to grab a crumbling deck of cards mid-air. What? No, that's not. There must be a system error. Ryan jabbed his finger toward the screen. It says the parent account was revoked. I thought I had a fund, Mom. You do. You did. I mean, your father set it up years ago, and I thought. You thought? Jesus, Mom. He shoved the chair back and stormed out, phone already dialing. Not Alan. Not Dana. He hadn't called him in almost a year. The phone rang 4 times. Then, you've reached Martin Rhodes. I'm unavailable at the moment. Leave a message, or don't. Ryan hesitated. The line beeped. Hey, it's me. Look, I don't know what happened, but my college stuff's messed up, and Mom says the account's gone, and I thought you said you were doing it for me. So, if you get this, I guess, call me back or whatever. He ended the call and stared at the floor. The silence didn't feel dramatic. It felt heavy, like someone had vacuumed all the air out of the house and left him to wander through the shell. Dana stood at the kitchen doorway, phone in her hand, unsure whether to follow him or hide from him. He turned to her, voice sharp and cracked. Did you even ask him about any of this before you let Alan mess with my future? Don't talk to me like that. Then stop lying to me like I'm 5. She flinched. Not from the volume, but from how much he suddenly sounded like his father. Ryan didn't wait for a response. He grabbed his coat and keys, even though he had nowhere to go. That night, Dana sat in the dark living room, watching the clock tick toward midnight. She called Martin again. Still voicemail. She left nothing this time. She considered calling Alan, but his number was probably tied up with lawyers and audit notices and whatever new fire his arrogance had lit that day. Upstairs, Ryan stared at the ceiling, wondering how a kid with a 3.9 GPA, a full resume, and 2 parents with leather furniture somehow ended up with nothing. What he didn't realize, what hadn't quite clicked, was that this wasn't a glitch. This wasn't an accident. This was a consequence. A very quiet, very intentional one. And his father had heard the voicemail. He just wasn't ready to reply. By the time Dana left the 5th voicemail, her voice had cracked into something unrecognizable. Not desperation. Not apology. Just static regret, dry and hollow, the kind that didn't come with tears anymore. Please, just call me. We don't need to rehash everything. It's about Ryan. He's spiraling. He needs clarity, something. You don't have to talk to me. Just, please. He's just a kid. She hung up without waiting for the beep. Across the room, Alan was pacing again, 3rd lap of the hallway, bare feet slapping the hardwood like they might summon an idea. His tie still dangled from his shirt like a noose no one finished tying. He's going to sue me personally, isn't he? Dana didn't respond. He stopped. Isn't he? She nodded slowly, like her neck had rusted overnight. If he connects the Weller Trust to the Hawthorne loan? If the audit finds what Patricia sent over? Yeah, he could. Alan exhaled, deep and sharp, like it might scare away the legal ghosts now settling into the corners of their vaulted-ceilinged home. Dana crossed her arms. You told me it didn't matter. That no one checks ownership lines that old. No one used to, Alan hissed. Until your ex decided to go full Ghost of Christmas legal. The dining table still had Ryan's laptop open, stuck on a financial aid portal error message. The screen cast a dim glow across the room, like a nightlight powered by disappointment. You need to fix this, she said suddenly, voice low. Alan barked a bitter laugh. Oh, now I need to fix it? You're the one who signed the loan. You're the one who never filed the release form. Her eyes narrowed. You said it didn't matter. You said we buried all of that. I also said your ex was soft. They both froze. There it was. They had laughed at him, mocked him for driving the same truck for a decade, for declining to join them on vacations, for being dull, predictable, boring. Alan had called him a shadow. Dana had once joked he had the sex appeal of a tax form. Now the tax form had a name, Patricia Strauss. And she didn't joke. Alan poured another drink, something smoky that made him feel powerful. It tasted like panic now. He stared into the glass. You think he's enjoying this? Dana didn't answer. But somewhere deep down, they both knew he wasn't enjoying it. He was executing it. Across town, Martin sat in his dim apartment, listening not to the voicemails, but to the hiss of the old radiator near his desk. Patricia's latest file sat unopened next to him, the word Discovery stamped across the front like a warning label. He hadn't called back. He wouldn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't revenge. This was recognition. Of every insult. Every substitution. Every smug replacement dinner where Ryan called someone else dad. And now, the silence they'd mistaken for surrender? It was strategy. And it was working. Alan knew the knock was wrong before he opened the door. It wasn't the frantic, guilt-laced tapping of a delivery guy who needed a signature. It wasn't the casual rhythm of a neighbor dropping off a misdelivered package. It was 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The kind people make when they're paid by the hour and backed by legal muscle. He opened the door anyway. Alan Bishop, the woman asked, crisp navy suit, clipboard, notepad already half-filled. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. She held out a thick envelope. You're being subpoenaed. Civil deposition. Failure to respond within 10 business days will constitute non-compliance. He took it without a word. She was already walking down the driveway before the flap was torn open. Back inside, Dana was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket like it could protect her from legal fallout. She looked up at his face and knew it wasn't another bill. What is it now? Alan scanned the first few lines. In the matter of Bishop Development Group, et al. Subject: allegations of fraudulent filings related to charitable deductions and contractor licensing. He kept reading. His lips moved without sound. It wasn't just about the loan anymore. This was bigger. This was federal. The audit had become an investigation. And the deposition wasn't about Dana or Ryan or a marital asset. It was about him. His business. His name. He flipped to the last page. Initiating party. Confidential. But there, at the bottom of the scanned complaint, was a reference number and a placeholder for a source document. MR 173BEX1. He stared at the initials. MR. Dana noticed. What? Alan held the page out like a piece of evidence in a murder trial. It's him. Martin Rhodes. He tipped them off. Dana's face went pale. Not shocked, just drained. You don't know that. I don't need to. Look at the footer. Look at the goddamn initials. He dropped the pages on the coffee table. The room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were leaning in. Alan's breathing picked up, the edges of his vision tightening. Do you know what happens if they prove the tax claim was fabricated? If they find out I used that as leverage for city approval? We lose everything. Not just the Hawthorne deal. Everything. The bank pulls the lines. The city blacklists us. I get named. I get sanctioned. Dana said nothing. She reached slowly for her phone. What are you doing? Alan asked, voice low. Calling him. Alan snatched the phone from her hand. No. We don't beg him. That's what he wants. She stood up. Maybe if we'd had the decency to talk to him instead of pretending he didn't exist, eh? Alan's voice snapped like a whip. We buried him. That was the whole point. But he said it too loudly. And for the first time, he realized the windows were open. That their world was too fragile for this kind of noise now. He sat back down, rubbed his temples. Dana just stared at the subpoena like it might catch fire on its own. Why now? She asked. Why all this? Now? Alan didn't answer. But he knew. Because ghosts don't haunt you when they're angry. They haunt you when they're ready. And Martin Rhodes had waited. Now, he was moving. Not in rage. In rhythm. Like a man who had counted every nail, every lie, every ounce of leverage, and was using it to dismantle their house one silent hammer blow at a time. Alan looked down at the pages again. Fraud. Deposition. Source. MR. It didn't feel like war. It felt like judgment. It was dusk when Ryan showed up. No engine revving, no screeching tires. He'd walked the last half mile, hoodie up, hands shoved deep in his jacket like maybe the shame wouldn't seep out if he clenched hard enough. The old house looked the same. Small porch. Faded paint. A windshield that barely moved. He hadn't been there in years. Not since Dana's divorce parties and Alan's promises made that house feel beneath him. Now it felt like neutral ground. He stood at the door for nearly a minute before raising his hand. Knocked once. Lightly. Like maybe he wasn't sure if he deserved to be heard. The door opened. Martin stood there. Still in that plain gray sweater. Same dark eyes. Same stillness. No anger. No softness either. Just a silence Ryan had never understood until lately. I didn't know you still, Ryan swallowed. I didn't know you still cared. Martin didn't answer at first. He just looked at him. Really looked. Not like a disappointed father. Not like someone hoping for the right apology. Just a man taking full inventory of what stood before him. When he finally spoke, his voice didn't rise. Respect is an ode. It's earned, he said. You all forgot that. Ryan nodded once. His mouth opened again, but nothing came out. There was too much to say, and none of it would undo the last few years. Martin gave him one more look. Then gently, without force, without drama, he closed the door. Click. No lock. No deadbolt. Just the soft shut of a boundary being drawn. Inside, Martin returned to his chair. Picked up the paperback he'd been reading. Didn't mark the page, he hadn't moved far from it. Across town, the collapse finally hit terminal velocity. Alan's firm received the letter from the Federal Development Board at 4:52 p.m., 1 minute before close of business. Subject line: termination of bid eligibility status, immediate effect. Every pending municipal contract revoked. Every future bid suspended indefinitely pending investigation. The reason? Inconsistencies in asset declarations and undeclared conflicts of interest stemming from contested marital trusts. Alan read the letter twice. Threw the stapler across the room on the third. His assistant had already left. The office was silent, save for the high-pitched whine of fluorescent lights and the buzz of his own breathing. His name would be on every internal memo by morning. A contractor blacklisted. A reputation as flammable as the lies that built it. At home, Dana was in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling. Her phone screen dimmed on its own. 5 unread messages from creditors. 1 from a local reporter. None from Ryan. Back at the quiet house with the wind chime, Martin sat still. No fireworks. No champagne. No speech. Just a man, alone, in the one place no one ever thought he'd win from. And winning not by force, but by reminder. That silence, when wielded right, is louder than anything they could have screamed. I don't want your last name anymore. It's pathetic. That sentence didn't just come out of nowhere. It detonated in the middle of a backyard filled with cheap lawn chairs, overcooked burgers, and people pretending to care about each other for the sake of tradition. I was holding a plate of ribs when Connor said it. I hadn't even put the damn food down before he fired that shot. 18 years old. Leaned back in his plastic chair like a discount James Dean, arms behind his head, sunglasses still on even though the sun had dipped below the tree line. Everyone got quiet. Forks froze. Soda cans hissed softly in hands that suddenly weren't sure whether to sip or slam them down. I didn't look at him right away. I looked at the ribs, smelled the sauce, thought about the time I spent slow smoking them this morning while replaying memories of his first Little League game. He struck out 3 times. Cried in the car. I told him, "You carry the Holbrook name. We don't quit." And now here he was, chuckling like he was dropping a dead brand. "I'm taking Mom's new last name. Bennett. Sounds cleaner. Stronger," he added. The worst part wasn't the words. It was how casually he tossed them out. Like he was scraping gum off his shoe. And when I finally raised my eyes, my ex-wife, Melissa, was already glancing away. Her new husband, Jack Bennett, the man Connor apparently idolized now, let out a smug little laugh, the kind that makes your fist twitch instinctively. I didn't punch him. I didn't even let my grip tighten. That would have meant he mattered. Instead, I nodded. All right. That was it. Just one word. But inside, something settled. Something ancient and silent and cold. Not rage. Rage burns fast and ugly. This was slower, like frost forming on glass you thought was safe. "I'll grab more ice," I said. And I walked inside. "All right, fellas, quick break. We're shooting for 10K subscribers. If you're enjoying these gripping tales of betrayal, hit that subscribe button, and let's get back to the story." Behind me, the conversation picked up again, nervously, like a crowd after an unexpected gunshot. I heard Melissa mutter something about me being overly sensitive. Jack said, "Let the boy be his own man." Someone turned the music up. The smell of burnt meat lingered. I didn't care. I opened the freezer, stared at the half-melted bag of ice, and let my hands rest on the counter. That countertop had seen years of glue projects, school lunches, late-night science fair disasters. Connor once carved his initials into the corner with a compass when he was 9. I had filled it with wood putty and sanded it smooth, telling him, "Holbrooks leave things better than they found them." Apparently not. Upstairs, the guest room was untouched, clean bedspread, dustless shelves. I sat down on the edge of the bed and opened the drawer of the old oak nightstand. Inside was a worn black notebook. I hadn't looked at it in years. Military contacts, notes from my active duty days, phone numbers from people who never left things unfinished. I thumbed through the pages slowly while laughter filtered in from outside. Jack's laugh, loud and empty. Connor's, high-pitched and nervous, like he knew he'd crossed a line but couldn't admit it. Melissa's fake, practice trill. It had the same tone she used when she'd say, "I'm just tired, Daniel," right before she stayed out late, visiting her sister. I found the page. Colonel Braxton, West Point liaison. We hadn't spoken in over a decade, but he still sent me a holiday card every year. I once pulled his son out of a collapsed building during an exercise gone wrong in Kandahar. Debt like that sticks in a military family. I didn't make the call yet. I just stared at the number. Memorized it again. Back outside, Connor strutted around with his chest puffed like a rooster in a thrift store polo. Jack handed him a beer. Melissa pretended not to see. I stepped back outside with the ice. "You okay, Dad?" someone asked. "Fine," I said, pouring cubes into the cooler. But I wasn't. I'd spent my entire life teaching that boy how to stand up straight, how to look someone in the eye, how to work with your hands when your words weren't enough. And now he wanted to cut off the name that had gotten him through every scraped knee and broken heart? All right, he thought it was just a name. He had no idea what else had opened or closed. That night, after the barbecue finally died down and the last of the lukewarm beers were tossed in the recycling bin, I sat in the dark of my study with nothing but the ceiling fan humming above and the soft click of my old desk lamp switching on. The house was dead quiet, eerily so. I hadn't turned the TV on. I hadn't taken off my shoes. I didn't even bother changing out of the polo still carrying the faint scent of hickory smoke and betrayal. On the desk sat the black notebook, leather-worn, corners chewed from years of travel. That thing had followed me through deployments, divorce, and disaster. Inside, it held only two kinds of names, those I'd buried and those I owed. Colonel Braxton was one of the latter. We weren't friends, not in the holiday dinner sense. We were something harder to define and far more permanent, bonded by blood, sweat, and silence. I saved his son's life in 2005. He swore he'd repay me one day. I told him he didn't have to, but the ledger's still there. I flipped to the page. His number hadn't changed. My hands hovered over the phone. I didn't hesitate because I was unsure. I hesitated because I understood the finality of what I was about to do. This wasn't grounding a teenager. This wasn't withholding car keys or canceling a Netflix password. This was cutting the thread that held together the only dream he'd clung to since he was 10 years old. West Point. He'd spent 4 years in ROTC, 2 summers at leadership academies, 100 hours on essays, interviews, preparation. I wrote the initial recommendation letter myself, called in favors, built the scaffolding around his ambition with care and pride. I told him, we carry this name with honor, and he used that same mouth to call it pathetic. I pressed dial. Braxton. His voice hadn't changed. Sharp as gravel. It's Holbrook. A pause. Then, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. You've got a kid named Connor Holbrook in the next admission cycle. Candidate ID ending in 88. There was a pause on the line. Sharp, not surprised. Yours. Was. Braxton exhaled through his nose. I could picture him. In his den, cigar tray nearby, glass of bourbon sweating on a coaster. Still wore the ring. Still said sir even when he didn't have to. You want me to kill it? I leaned back in my chair. He's free to reapply. But he no longer carries my endorsement. And I'd appreciate if you let the right people know, discreetly. No mess. Just remove the support line. No reason needed. Understood. Click. That was it. No drama. No judgment. Just a clean, clinical excision. Like cutting out a rot before it spreads. I set the phone down and looked around the room. Photos on the wall. My dad shaking my hand at my own commissioning. Connor in his Boy Scout uniform. Melissa in the background of a Thanksgiving photo, already leaning away from me even then. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to read them. On my desk was a small brass compass Connor made for me at camp when he was 12. The engraving on the lid said, "To help you find your way home." I stared at it for a while, then closed it, gently, like a coffin lid. Next morning, the email came through. Subject, candidate support withdrawn. Body, application no longer supported. Admission status under review. Candidate to be notified. No fanfare. No follow-up. Just a polite, bureaucratic guillotine. I deleted the email, then opened a new browser tab and began quietly updating other documents, wills, trusts, beneficiary listings. All while Connor slept in his mother's house under a roof I used to pay for, dreaming of parades he'd never march in. He had no idea. Not yet. But soon, he'd wake up to a future that looked exactly like the one he wanted. Just without me in it. There's a particular kind of arrogance that only exists in teenage boys, especially the kind raised on validation and screens. Connor had inherited his mother's pride and Jack's tact, which is to say, he had neither humility nor discretion. That night, the same night I made the call to end his West Point future, he was in the den of Melissa's house, feet up on the coffee table I built, laughing over group text with boys who'd never held a job longer than a summer. I didn't have to guess what he said. I read it. Years ago, I installed device sync on Connor's phone. Parental guidance, I told him. He was 13. It was for emergencies. Location tracking, backup, safety nets. He never thought to remove it. And I never mentioned it again. The moment I saw my name drop in a group chat titled Dubois, I opened a fresh mug of black coffee, sat down at my desk, and read every pixel like it was a confession. Connor told my old man to shove it today, skull. Ryan, LMAO finally. That dude's so uptight. Connor, he looked like he wanted to cry face with tears of joy. Tyler, Bruce skull. Connor, FR though I'm done carrying his loser name. I'm a Bennett now. No more whole broke back BS rolling on floor laughing. Melissa, yes, she was in the next thread. Connor sent the same screenshot there. Her reply? A laughing emoji, followed by, told you he'd just sulk. That man can't handle real men in the room. Then Jack chimed in. Should have done it years ago, kid. You're a Bennett. Start acting like it. No punctuation. No shame. I stared at the screen. Not with anger. No, anger's loud and brief. This was something else. Something that runs cold and deep. Like oil beneath the surface of calm water. I clicked Save Conversation. Exported the full thread. Timestamped. I didn't reply. Didn't interfere. I let them celebrate like hyenas dancing on a grave they thought was filled. They didn't realize the grave was still empty, and the man they thought they'd buried was sitting in the dark, archiving every word. Connor sent a photo of my old army plaque, boxed up and tossed in the garage. Captioned, History, not mine. One of his buddies responded, Dude, you are savage, 100 points. I enlarged that image. There was dust on the wood, a cobweb curling near the corner. I hadn't seen it since the move. I guess Melissa finally got around to deciding which of my memories were clutter. I took a screenshot. Saved that too. It wasn't about revenge, not in the way they'd understand. This wasn't a fit of rage. This was data collection, logging evidence, building the file that would eventually fold in on itself like a collapsing bridge. No one would hear the creak until the fall. And fall it would. They mistook silence for submission. They thought I walked away from the barbecue that day because I didn't have a comeback. They had no idea I was already writing the end of their victory parade. One text at a time. One laugh at a time. All logged. All timestamped. Because Connor thought he was making a bold declaration. But what he actually sent me was a signed confession. I started with the living trust. It was a quiet Thursday morning, the kind where most people sip coffee and scroll the news, but I had my fingers on a keyboard, my mind sharper than it had been in years. No distractions, no noise, just methodical reallocation of legacy. Precision, not pettiness. I wasn't cutting him out of rage. I was removing him like a surgeon excising rot. My attorney, Janice, picked up on the second ring. Daniel, everything okay? Just need some updates, I said. My voice was calm, professional. The voice of a man who had already buried the emotion and was now focused on paperwork. I sent over the revised beneficiary designations first. Connor Holbrook, stricken from the trust, the life insurance, the pension rollover. The trust's primary now read, Designated Beneficiaries, Veterans Children Education Fund, 60%. Operation Valor Grant Program, 25%. St. Paul's Orphan Support Network, 15%. The language was airtight. Janice made sure of it. No future contests. No emotional appeals. No loopholes. Every clause contained language that made the terms irrevocable under all foreseeable challenges. I'd seen men get clever when the money vanished. I was making sure Connor couldn't even find the door. From there, I tackled the 529 college fund. It was originally built the year he turned 6, $150 a month, every month. It was supposed to be a nest egg for his future. He never even knew how much was in there. Didn't care. Just assumed it was covered, because I always had it covered. I transferred the full amount to a scholarship foundation for Gold Star families. Called the director myself. Told them it was a quiet donation, no credit needed. They insisted on naming a grant after me. I declined. Let it go nameless. The only person who'd feel its absence would be the one who thought he was entitled to it. Then I logged into the insurance portal. Connor had been listed as a dependent since birth. Health, dental, even that optional accident protection. Gone in less than 5 minutes. The system prompted me with a gentle pop-up. Are you sure you wish to remove your child as a dependent? I clicked yes without blinking. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a declaration of absence. I left nothing open-ended. I rewrote the medical power of attorney, emergency contact lists, all digital estate entries. Hell, I even updated my funeral directives. No mention of Connor. The man at the funeral home looked at me over his glasses when I specified, "Do not notify next of kin unless expressly listed. Use written list only." He said, "Estranged?" I said, "Erased." The last task was symbolic. I opened my fireproof safe and pulled out a wooden cigar box. Inside were mementos, Connor's baby bracelet, his first honor roll pin, a photo of him in fatigues at the West Point prep camp. I took the box to the fireplace, lit a match. Didn't burn the photo, just the pin, the bracelet, the fragments of a boy who no longer existed. The photo I kept. I slipped it into a manila envelope, along with printouts of his texts, screenshots, and the now voided West Point letter. Then I sealed the envelope and wrote his name on it in block letters. Not out of sentiment, out of documentation. Legacy isn't just about inheritance. It's about intention. And I had just rewritten mine. With absolute clarity. With finality. And without a single raised voice. It was exactly 8 days after that barbecue when the crack finally formed. Not in my plan, but in his illusion. Connor had been riding the high of his name-drop stunt like a prize stallion. Posting gym selfies captioned Bennett bloodline flexed biceps. Strutting around in a knockoff cadet hoodie from some military surplus store he probably thought made him look official. Melissa was soaking it up, of course. Her golden boy finally free of the big, bad shadow of his father. Jack Bennett even gave him a hand-me-down Omega watch and called it a symbol of manhood. But the universe, bless its timing, sent the first fracture through Connor's perfect little mirror at 2:41 p.m. on a Thursday. Subject, application update. From Office of Admissions, United States Military Academy. Body. Dear candidate, this is to confirm receipt of your recent withdrawal of support from your designated recommender. As a result, your application status has changed to withdrawn. No further action is required. Should you wish to reapply, a new recommendation and evaluation cycle will be necessary. Respectfully, USMA Admissions. That's all it took. 10 years of dreams, gone in 4 sentences and a system flag. Melissa was at work when he saw it. He texted her 3 times. Connor, WTF is this West Point email? Connor, did you or Jack say something? Connor, call me. Now. No answer. He tried to call me next. 3 rings. Voicemail. Hey, it's Daniel. Leave a message. He didn't. Of course he didn't. Kids like Connor don't leave messages. They expect instant callbacks, like life's a customer service line. But I was no longer customer support for his ego. He texted instead. Connor, Dad, I got a weird message from West Point. Connor, says I withdrew my app. I didn't. Connor, this has to be a mistake. Call me. I watched them come in, one after another. Notifications popping up like popcorn, urgent and uncomposed. I didn't open a single one. I just let them sit there, unread. Unanswered. Melissa tried next. Her tone wasn't panicked. It was accusatory. Melissa. Daniel, what the hell is going on with West Point? Connor just got something about withdrawal. Was that you? She should have ended the sentence after hell. Everything after that just made her sound desperate. I didn't reply to her either. Instead, I turned off message previews and opened a fresh journal entry. Dated it. Logged the time of the email. Saved a PDF copy. Backed it up on an encrypted flash drive. That's what men like me do. We don't scream. We document. Meanwhile, Connor was unraveling. He logged into his application portal. Status, withdrawn. No appeal. No path forward. Every contact form redirected him to a generic admissions inbox. The recommenders section, once listing my name, now showed support withdrawn. Application void pending new nomination. He tried to call West Point directly. Left a voicemail. Sent 3 emails. No reply. He even tried to message Colonel Braxton on LinkedIn. That one got blocked. He spiraled. The group chat, Dubois, went silent after he posted a screenshot of the email. Connor, I think my dad tanked my application. I don't even know how. Tyler, wait FR. Ryan, damn. No emojis this time. No skulls. Just silence. Later that night, Melissa stormed into my voicemail again. Daniel, if you're behind this, you'd better pick up the phone right now. This is his future. You can't just sabotage your own son. Sabotage? No, sweetheart. Sabotage is what happens when someone destroys a thing they never built. What I did was quietly take back what I did build, because the boy who spit on the foundation didn't deserve to stand on it. Connor had wanted my name gone, so I started by taking it off the door, and then I locked it behind me. He pulled into the driveway too fast. The tires on his mom's leased SUV kicked up a cloud of dust that lingered in the mid-morning heat like a ghost of urgency. Connor didn't even turn off the engine at first, just stared at the house, expecting something to feel normal. The blue shutters, the chipped mailbox, the gnome statue in the garden that Melissa always hated but I refused to remove. It was all there, and yet none of it was. The for sale sign stood in the yard like a tombstone. Under contract, the red sticker screamed across the top. The grass around it had been trimmed recently, but Connor didn't notice. He jumped out of the car, left the door ajar with the keys still inside, and bolted up the porch steps like he was chasing down a retreating dream. He knocked, waited, knocked harder. Nothing. The curtains were gone. No lights on. No sounds. Just the faint creak of the porch swaying in the breeze. He reached for the doorknob, tried it. Locked. He pressed his face to the window, cupped his hands around his eyes like a child trying to peer into a forbidden room. All he saw was emptiness, bare walls, polished floors, a house already stripped of the past. The photo frames were gone. The army shadow box, gone. Even the faded recliner I used to nap in, gone. There was nothing left of me there. Not even the smell. That's when Mrs. Gentry shuffled out from across the street, holding a watering can and a cigarette like she'd seen this scene before and wasn't surprised. You looking for Mr. Holbrook? Connor turned, desperate. Yeah. Is he here? She gave him a long once-over, unimpressed. He moved out. Couple weeks ago, I think. Said he was heading to the coast. The coast? She nodded. Didn't say much. Just that he was done with this place. Sold it fast too. Cash buyer. Quiet man, but efficient. Connor blinked. Did he leave a number? She puffed smoke in his general direction. Not with me. He opened his mouth again, like he might ask for more, but she was already heading back toward her begonias. He turned back to the door. Knocked again, slower this time. Like maybe the house would change its mind. It didn't. Instead, it just stared back at him with hollow windows, unblinking and indifferent. He sank down on the porch step. The same step where we used to sit on Halloween nights handing out candy. Where I once taught him how to tie a tie before his freshman dance. Where he told me, at 13, that he was going to West Point just like I had. And now? Now he sat there like a trespasser. He pulled out his phone. Tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. Again. He opened his text thread. Dozens of unread messages from his side. Dad, please call me. Seriously, we need to talk. West Point is saying stuff that doesn't make sense. Are you ignoring me? Why did you move? He scrolled, then stopped on an older one, the one he'd sent right after the barbecue. I'm done with the Holbrook name. He stared at it. The screen dimmed. Locked. The porch creaked beneath him, and for the first time in days, Connor felt something new settle into his chest. Not anger, not bravado, but the sharp, quiet ache of absence. The house hadn't betrayed him. I had simply taken my legacy and left before it could be stolen. The party was everything Melissa wanted and nothing Connor needed. White tents in the backyard. A rented photo booth with props that screamed class clown with a scholarship. Buffet trays of catered wings and sliders. Custom cupcakes with frosting that read Bennett bound in gold cursive. Jack handed out cigars like he was some sort of patriarch. It was a performance, a loud, overpriced denial of reality. Because behind all the balloons and banners, one glaring truth still clung to Connor like invisible smoke. He hadn't heard back from West Point. Not since the cryptic, withdrawal confirmed email 2 weeks ago. Every follow-up message had gone unanswered. Every call to their admissions line met with soft-voiced apologies and redirects to general policy links. Still, he smiled. Took pictures. Laughed too loudly. Posed with the same group of friends who once celebrated his rejection of me like it was a spiritual awakening. Until the envelope arrived. No return address. No postage mark. Just a plain manila envelope slipped into the stack of cards on the gift table between one from Uncle Jared and a novelty check labeled for your dorm pizza fund. Connor didn't notice it at first. It was Melissa who handed it to him. "Here's one more," she said absently, sipping champagne. "No name on it. Probably one of your buddies being dramatic." He tore it open in front of the crowd. The first thing that slid out was a photo, familiar, printed on thick stock. His West Point acceptance letter. The original one. He had posted it months ago on Instagram. The same one that once got 1,400 likes and 3 DMs from girls he never had a chance with. Only now, it had a red diagonal stamp across it. Void. The room shifted. Laughter dimmed. Conversation paused, the way it does when people smell something burning and aren't sure whether to run or pretend it's fine. The second item slipped free. A 3-page printout. A timeline. June 4th, told my old man to shove it today, skull. June 4th, screenshot of barbecue group chat with pathetic name, insult. June 5th, I'm a Bennett now. Holbrook who? June 6th, photo of Daniel's military plaque boxed up with caption history. Not mine. June 8th, I'd gaff if he cries, man needed to hear it. Face with tears of joy. All with timestamps. All with screenshots. The third and final item, a single page, handwritten in blue ink. Neat. Measured. Like a final entry in a soldier's field journal. Connor. You said you didn't want my name. That it was pathetic. That you were done with everything I represented. I heard you. And I respected your choice. So I gave you what you asked for. A future without me in it. No endorsements. No money. No protection. No name. You earned your place at West Point, but you destroyed your standing with the one man who made the call that got you there. The man whose name opened the door you just slammed shut. Enjoy your new path. This is what a name really meant. Deech. Connor didn't move for a moment. Then he crumpled the letter too late. Half the room had already seen it. Melissa's mouth hung open, frozen mid-sip. Jack leaned in, snatched the paper from Connor's hand, read 2 lines, and handed it back without a word. Connor's friends suddenly found their phones fascinating. One of them, Ryan, whispered to another, "Yo, is this for real?" A few people started quietly collecting their gift bags. Melissa hissed, "Is this a joke?" But her voice cracked. Connor said nothing. His face had gone pale. The fake tan from the photo booth lights made it worse. Then his grandfather, my father's brother, Uncle Paul, stepped forward, read the letter over his shoulder, and shook his head. "We told you, boy. We warned you not to spit on your father's name." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. He just turned and walked out of the party, slow and deliberate. 2 of my cousins followed him. Then 3 more relatives. A family fracture in motion. Melissa stood frozen in the yard, surrounded by empty champagne glasses and wilting decorations. Connor sat down in a folding chair. Alone. Envelope on his lap. A future once gift-wrapped in legacy. Now just paper, silence, and a name he couldn't take back. Connor didn't notice the shift at first. He was still staring at the envelope in his lap like it might morph into something else if he just looked long enough. His fingers traced the crease of the handwritten letter, the one he crumpled, then uncrumpled, now unsure whether to destroy it or frame it like some cursed artifact. But the crowd around him was already thinning. His grandfather had left first, quietly. No dramatic exit. Just a glance, a muttered damn shame, and a slow walk to the car with a cane in one hand and silence in the other. His father's siblings followed, people who had held Connor as a baby, sent him birthday cards, slipped him 20s at Christmas. Not one of them looked back. And still, he sat. The cupcakes were melting. The photo booth operator was checking his watch. The DJ, hired to spin top 40 over Connor's grand moment, dialed the music down to soft background noise, the universal signal that the party was dying. Melissa noticed next. She was pacing the patio now, barefoot, drink sloshing in her glass. Her face red, not from wine but from fury she couldn't place. She barked at the caterers, told the DJ to turn the volume back up, tried to rally the moment, as if streamers and sliders could drown out the echo of a legacy disowning its heir. Then she turned on Connor. "What was that, Connor? Did you know he was going to do this?" Her voice snapped across the backyard like a whip. "You had to have known. This is your fault." Connor's head jerked up. "My fault? You think this just came out of nowhere?" she hissed, crouching beside him now, teeth clenched behind her rehearsed smile. Do you have any idea what this looks like? What your grandfather just said. Connor stood up too fast, knocking over the chair. He made me look like the villain. Melissa's eyes flared. You made yourself look like the villain. Do you know how many people saw those texts? Those posts? You didn't forge them, Connor. You put your idiocy online and expected applause. The crowd, such as it remained, heard every word. Jack, the great savior, the stepfather of the year, stood uselessly by the cooler with a beer and a half-limp cigar. He didn't step in, didn't defend, just watched like a man realizing the tides were shifting and his yacht wasn't as buoyant as he thought. Connor turned in a slow circle, scanning the faces. Not one smiled. A cousin whispered to her mother, who shook her head with tight lips. Someone muttered, he did this to himself. Another, Danny always gave him everything. And then, the one that stung the most. He warned them. He warned them. Connor shouted then. You all think this is fair? You think I deserve this? He ruined my future. He killed my West Point slot. He abandoned me. No response. Just the soft clink of silverware and the sound of distance being measured in footsteps. Melissa spun toward Jack now. Say something. Jack took a breath, but what came out wasn't support. Just, it was a mistake letting him post that trash. Should have made him delete it. And with that, the final straw cracked. Connor's eyes went wide. You were the one who said I should be my own man. You said Dad was weak. Jack didn't even look at him. And you believed it. That's on you. Connor felt it then, not just the embarrassment, not just the anger, but the full, sinking awareness that no one was standing with him. The name he discarded didn't just belong to Daniel. It belonged to the people leaving this party. The ones who knew what that name meant. The ones who now saw him as the boy who spat on his father and got handed a mirror in return. Connor staggered back to the table, palms on the edge like he needed it to keep upright. The photo of his voided West Point letter stared up at him like a gravestone. The guests around him? Ghosts now. He was at his own celebration, and yet the only one being celebrated was the man who wasn't there. It happened by accident, or maybe it didn't. 3 weeks had passed since the implosion at the party, since the letter, since the room emptied around him and left only a boy clinging to the ruins of a name he thought he could outgrow. Connor had been trying to track me down ever since, calling from burner phones, messaging from fake accounts, even driving to addresses that came up in background checks. He tried my old vet clinic in Shreveport, tried the post office I used to pick up my checks from. Nothing. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I stepped out of a quiet library on the edge of a coastal town. One of those glass and brick buildings people forget exists until they need free Wi-Fi or a tax form. I had just returned The Art of War, the irony of which would hit me later when I heard the brakes squeal behind me. He hadn't changed much, but desperation had hollowed him. Hair unkempt, eyes bagged, cheeks sunken like sleep hadn't visited him in a while. He slammed the door shut and jogged across the parking lot. Dad, I stopped. Not because of the word, but because it was the first time in weeks he'd used it without irony, sarcasm, or shame. He caught up to me, breathless. Dad, please. Just wait. I turned. He looked like a boy again. Not the posturing man-child from the barbecue. Not the smirking fool from the group chat. Just a boy who'd seen the edge and realized the bridge was gone. I didn't mean it, he said. His voice cracked halfway through. That stuff I said, about your name, the texts, the party. I was just angry. I didn't think it'd go that far. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at him, studied the way his hands trembled slightly at his sides, the way his eyes kept flicking away like the truth might blind him if he held contact too long. He kept talking. I didn't know West Point would drop me. I've tried everything, Dad. I sent letters, made calls. They won't even look at me without a new recommendation and I need you. Just a letter. Just a call. Please. Still, I didn't answer. Not yet. I just let the silence stretch, long and surgical. He filled it, clumsily. I was wrong, okay? I thought Jack was the future. That you were just stuck in the past. But I get it now. I do. You didn't just carry the name, you built it. I thought I could just throw that away and I didn't know what it cost. That's when I sighed. Not because I was tired. Because I'd been here before. With him, with Melissa, with the slow rot of gratitude turning into entitlement. But this time, This was the final page. You meant every word, I said softly. And words have weight. He shook his head. I didn't. You did. And that's fine. You're allowed to choose your own path. But don't come crawling back to the bridge you lit on fire asking me to rebuild it. He looked like I'd hit him. Just help me fix West Point. I'll do the rest. Just get me in the door again. I finally met his eyes. I didn't break it, I said. You did. He opened his mouth. Closed it. His eyes welled, but no tears fell. Just a deep, slow realization that the man standing in front of him was no longer a safety net. No longer a backup plan. No longer reachable. I turned, walked past the pines toward the rental car. Sunlight cut through the branches in sharp golden blades. He didn't follow, didn't shout, didn't beg. He just stood there, surrounded by the echoes of choices he thought were jokes, and watched his last lifeline walk away, not with anger, not with malice. Just finality and silence. The reunion was held in a rented lodge overlooking the lake, the same one we used to gather at every other summer when Connor was still the wide-eyed kid who thought his grandfather's war stories were cooler than Marvel movies. This year, he showed up alone. No Melissa, no Jack, just Connor, driving 3 hours in a rusted sedan that wasn't his but borrowed, his SUV long since reclaimed when Melissa stopped covering his gas and Jack stopped answering his calls. He wore a collared shirt, sleeves rolled up, tried to smile at the check-in table like nothing had happened. But they knew. Everyone there knew. You don't silence a name like mine and expect it not to echo. Inside the hall, cousins buzzed around with toddlers, aunts arranged pies, and Uncle Paul, stoic as ever, stood by the display near the fireplace, a tribute wall to family service members. My photo was there, in uniform, next to my father's. A small plaque rested below it, in honor of those who still carry the Holbrook name with pride. Connor froze when he saw it. His name wasn't anywhere on that wall. A few feet away, the MC tapped the mic. Before we continue with lunch, we have one special announcement. This year's reunion was made possible by a generous donation from Daniel Holbrook, who couldn't be here today, but wanted to send his regards to the legacy that still lives and breathes among us. Polite applause rippled through the room. Connor didn't clap. His jaw tightened. Eyes scanned the tables until he found the one near the front. Table 1, reserved every year for the eldest members and direct patriarchs. It had 8 chairs. 7 were filled. 1 was empty. Everyone knew whose it was supposed to be. His. Next to the chair was a folded place card. He stepped closer, heart thudding. Picked it up. Read it. It didn't have his name. It wasn't blank. It said, reserved for the name that remains. Connor's hand dropped to his side. Place card fluttered back to the table like a white flag. He stood there, alone, in a room full of family he used to call his. Now they just nodded, offered forced smiles, and turned back to their conversations. The whispers returned like old ghosts. Did you see the donation note? God, Daniel still sharp as ever. Connor, he really burned that bridge, huh? Name means something. Always has. A cousin's kid passed him holding a Holbrook family t-shirt, the back printed with the names of all family members who contributed to the event. Connor scanned the list. Daniel's name was there. Mine. Connor's wasn't. Not as a donor. Not as a Holbrook. He stepped outside, the spring breeze hitting him like truth. He sat on the bench by the lake. Same one he and I used to fish off. Same one where I'd once told him, legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you honor. Now, he'd inherited nothing. No name. No place at the table. No chair to sit in. No echo to follow. Just the sound of kids laughing behind him, stories being told, lives continuing around a name that had already let go of him. Daniel Holbrook wasn't in the building, but his presence filled it. His donation built it. His silence sealed it. And in that moment, with nothing in his hands and no name to carry, Connor realized. He hadn't just lost a father. He had erased his place in the very bloodline that once carried him. The legacy hadn't ended. It had moved on. Without him. Why don't you just disappear? The words didn't slap. They carved. Right through the air, through my ribs, down to something I didn't know could still bleed. We were halfway through dinner. Thursday night. Same as always. Roasted chicken, green beans, a bottle of mid-shelf wine Karen picked up to celebrate the countdown. 10 days until the wedding. 10 damn days. I just wired the florist $6,400. Megan hadn't said thank you. Hadn't said anything. She stirred her food like it insulted her. And then that. I didn't blink. I didn't ask her to repeat it. Hell, I heard it too clearly. Every syllable snapped into place like a lock clicking shut on a cell door. Karen's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, but didn't make it down. She didn't say a word. Not a single goddamn word. That might have been the worst part. Not the girl I raised saying it, but the woman I married letting it hang in the air like steam off a carcass. I leaned back in my chair slowly, watching Megan look anywhere but at me. Not at the man who picked her up from ballet when her real dad forgot. Not at the man who taught her how to ride a bike, cleaned up her vomit during the flu, threatened her prom date into behaving without ever raising his voice. So that's how you feel? I said. No one answered. Just the tick of the wall clock. I cut into my steak. Medium rare, supposedly, but bloodless and gray. Should have matched the tone in the room. She was wearing that smug little blouse she bought from that overpriced bridal boutique downtown, the one Karen pretended to accidentally leave the receipt for on the table, hoping I'd reimburse it without a word. I did. Like always. I paid, and they forgot. Megan twisted her engagement ring with the same hand that used to slip into mine when she had nightmares. It's not personal, she mumbled, still not meeting my eyes. Not personal. Like I was a hotel reservation they'd forgotten to cancel in time. Like this was all logistics. Not a man's life. Karen finally cleared her throat. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd say something. Anything. Even a weak apology disguised as a joke. But no. Just a shallow sip of wine and her eyes darting to the napkin in her lap like she was more embarrassed by the linen than her daughter's betrayal. That's when it clicked. The absence of surprise in Karen's face. The way Megan's voice didn't even crack when she said it. This wasn't spontaneous. This was rehearsed. Practiced. I was the last one in the room to hear the line. That's what hurt. They'd already decided I was disposable. I just hadn't gotten the memo. I looked around the room I paid for, the granite countertop Karen insisted on, the leather chairs Megan never thanked me for, the dumb centerpiece candle arrangement I let them drag me into buying at that artisan fair. All of it built brick by brick with the life I'd put aside for them. I stood up. Calm. Slow. My chair scraped the hardwood with a sound that made Megan flinch more than anything she'd said. Karen still didn't move. I'll take care of the rest of the bills, I said. Wouldn't want your big day ruined by my selfish presence. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out of that dining room the way I'd walked into every crisis in their lives, quietly, without applause, no parade. Just the man who fixed things. Except this time, I wasn't coming back with duct tape and a solution. This time, I was the problem, and I was finally walking away from it. At 1:47 a.m., I sat in the truck in the dark, engine off, keys in hand, staring at the glow of the dashboard clock like it owed me something. The world was quiet in that kind of way you only hear in the hours between yesterday and regret. I hadn't slept. Didn't want to. The bed still smelled like her lilac shampoo and lavender oil and that particular brand of indifference she wore to bed every night for the past year. On the seat next to me, one duffel bag, packed tight, 2 changes of clothes, my birth certificate, a St. Christopher medal Megan gave me when she was 9, and the divorce papers I'd printed out but never signed. Fishing rod in the back. Tackle box under the seat. The old thermos she used to joke was the ugliest thing in the house, filled with black coffee and silence. At 2 a.m. sharp, I walked back into the house one last time. I didn't turn on the lights. I knew every creak in the floor, every spot where the wood groaned under weight. I passed the gallery wall of photos Megan insisted we hang. Prom, high school graduation, that ski trip I almost missed a utility payment for. I paused at one, her on my shoulders at Lake Martin, age 10, laughing. My hands holding her ankles like the whole damn world could fall and I'd still catch her. I reached the kitchen and pulled the envelope from my coat pocket. Just a simple white one, sealed, labeled in my handwriting, for Karen and Megan. Inside, receipts. Final florist payment. Catering confirmation. The check for the DJ voided. The photographer? Canceled. The deposit's gone, but the balance won't be. In one line, written on a sticky note and placed dead center on the granite island. Paid in full. That was it. Not a speech. Not a letter to make them feel bad. Just the truth. They wanted me gone. I gave them what they wanted. Quietly. Thoroughly. On the way out, I unplugged the landline phone. No drama, just instinct. It felt like turning off a life support machine I'd kept running long past when it meant anything. I walked past our bedroom. Karen snored lightly. Peacefully. Like someone whose world hadn't shifted yet. I wondered how long it would take for her to notice the void. Or if she'd even flinch. By the time the sun rose, I was 200 miles out, heading northwest with no destination. Just a string of back roads I used to take when Megan was a kid and couldn't sleep. We'd drive past cornfields and gas stations and tell stories about where the trucks were going, who lived in the little farmhouses with one porch light on. She once told me I made every place feel safe. Now, I drove without her, without them, and for the first time in years, the weight in my chest wasn't love, it was relief. Cold, clean, bitter relief. They wanted a wedding without a father. So I gave them what they asked for. No arguments. No tears. No goodbyes. Just a man who vanished like a ghost, except this ghost left a receipt. The brunch was at some overpriced fusion spot with $18 mimosas and waiters in aprons that looked ironed by surgeons. Karen sat at the head of the patio table, sunglasses on, radiant in that brittle way only women who've convinced themselves they won the argument can be. She twirled her straw through the crushed mint in her glass and gave her audience a polished smile. He took it well, she said, voice syrupy. Didn't even raise his voice. Just nodded and walked off like a gentleman. Honestly, I think he understood. Her friends laughed, all perfect teeth and shallow empathy. One of them leaned in, faux whispered, "You always said he was too docile." Karen shrugged, sipped. "He's not a bad guy. Just not a wedding dad, you know." There it was. That phrase. Like being there for 17 years didn't qualify me for a walk down the aisle. Like barbecuing in the rain at her 13th birthday, pulling double shifts to cover her braces, sitting through 23 middle school band concerts, all that made me less of a father than a man who vanished before she lost her baby teeth. Meanwhile, across town, Megan was nestled in a white leather booth at a downtown cafe, angling her phone just right to catch the light. Filter on. Brows arched. Smile calculated. "Can't wait for Dad to walk me down the aisle." Posted with a heart emoji, champagne glass, and a hashtag that read #blessed. Comment section lit up like Christmas morning. "OMG, he's back? So happy for you. A girl's first love is her daddy red heart." She didn't respond to those. She was too busy refreshing her texts. There were 3 unread ones from Dad in her phone. The real Dad. The one whose last birthday gift was a Toys R Us gift card with a $0 balance and a note that said, "Oops, next time." That Dad hadn't replied to a single one of her recent messages. Wednesday, 3:12 p.m. Flight booked? Just want to make sure everything's good. Red heart. Friday, 11:08 a.m. We got the suit rental info if you still need it. Saturday, 6:44 p.m. Dad? Hello. No dots. No replies. Just her reflection in a screen growing dimmer every hour. Karen saw the worry creeping in. She brushed it off with a wave. "He'll show," she said confidently, lying more to herself than to her daughter. It's his daughter. He wouldn't miss it. But her voice cracked just slightly, just enough that one of her brunch friends cocked her head. Karen laughed it off, topped off her drink, and changed the subject to flower arrangements in which guests would definitely cry. And in that sunny, clinking little patio, surrounded by Prosecco and performance, they toasted to a story they'd written themselves, the stoic ex, the triumphant mother, the prodigal father returning to claim his rightful place. They believed the fantasy so hard they forgot to check if it was real. They didn't notice the phone calls going unanswered. They didn't notice the silence growing heavier by the hour. They toasted to a future that was already unraveling behind their backs. The vineyard smelled like roses and desperation. By 3:17 p.m., the guests had arrived. Rows of white folding chairs faced the altar, flanked by imported flower arrangements that cost more than my first car. The sun was merciless, baking the ceremony space in that way vineyards pretend is rustic charm. Guests fanned themselves with programs printed on ivory cardstock while sipping sparkling water out of fluted glasses, just enough class to mask the tension. Megan stood behind the floral archway in her designer gown, white lace clinging to her shoulders like it was afraid of her. Her bouquet trembled in her hands. Not from nerves. She was too proud to admit that, But because for the last 27 minutes, no one had been able to reach the man she now insisted on calling Dad. The string quartet had already restarted the processional music twice. Once at 2:58, again at 3:11. Now it was 3:22. The song was looping awkwardly, the violinist's fingers visibly tired. Guests had started glancing at their watches, whispering. A bridesmaid was biting her nail behind her bouquet, hiding it with flowers and bad posture. Karen, in her navy blue mother-of-the-bride dress, stood by the catering tent, whisper screaming into her phone like a woman trying to win a hostage negotiation. The wedding coordinator, clipboard clutched to her chest like a riot shield, kept repeating, "We can hold another 5 minutes, but then we lose golden hour lighting." Karen hissed through her teeth, "He'll be here." The coordinator didn't reply, just nodded like you do to someone on the edge of losing it. Megan's phone had 14 unanswered texts to Dad. Her lipstick was cracking at the corners, and her mascara was beginning to spider beneath her right eye. Her voice, normally polished, mocking, cruel when needed, was a brittle whisper now. Did he say he landed? He said he was coming, didn't he? Karen didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together in that familiar, angry smile way she always used when bills were due and I hadn't read her mind about needing new curtains. The truth was already unraveling, thread by thread. He never got on the plane. Not the red-eye from Phoenix. Not the morning flight from Denver. Nothing. There was no Uber from the airport. No last-minute tux fitting. No dramatic entrance to rescue the illusion. Because the man she gambled everything on didn't care enough to even call. And the man who would have been there, who would have stood tall, suited, steady, had already given them exactly what they asked for. Nothing. Megan stood under that arch, the hem of her gown twitching in the breeze, and every guest was now facing her with silent confusion. A photographer pretended to check his lens settings, but kept glancing toward the empty aisle. The silence grew louder than the string quartet's next attempt. Karen whispered something sharp to the officiant, who cleared his throat awkwardly and looked around like someone was about to shout, "Just kidding," and save the scene. But nothing happened. No dramatic music swell. No long-lost father running breathlessly across the vineyard. Just a bride gripping an archway like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Eyes darting toward the gravel path, still hoping. And a crowd beginning to realize what was missing wasn't late. It was never coming. Straight to voicemail again. Karen's voice, once so rehearsed and performative, now had an edge of something real in it. Panic's dry cousin, desperation. She lowered her phone and stared at the blank screen like it owed her an explanation. The photographer shifted his weight again, subtly, like someone trying not to admit they were bored. His camera strap squeaked as he turned toward the aisle for the 5th time, fingers hovering, waiting for a groom or a father, any damn excuse to start clicking. Nothing. The guests were no longer murmuring in hushed curiosity. They were whispering with purpose now. 2 women in the 3rd row leaned in close over their designer clutch purses. Didn't her stepdad pay for everything? I heard he's not here. Maybe he left? Megan, white-knuckled around her bouquet, stared at her phone with a frozen smile like she thought if she looked calm enough, it would undo reality. Her hands trembled, but she kept repositioning the flowers, twisting them slightly, again and again, as if the symmetry might hold her together. Text bubbles stared back at her. Unread, unreceived. Where are you? Everyone's waiting. Please just say something. Her face, caked in professionally applied makeup that cost more than a month of groceries, was beginning to show tiny fractures. A bead of sweat slid down her temple and took a line of foundation with it. Her lower lip, so glossy just an hour ago, now trembled slightly as she tried to blink moisture into eyes gone dry from waiting. Karen turned to the wedding coordinator again. "We'll walk," she said through clenched teeth. The woman hesitated. "Are you sure?" Karen nodded. "We can't hold them any longer. People are getting restless." From behind them, a hushed voice whispered, "Do we wait?" Karen spun slightly, eyes narrow. "No, we walk." But as she turned back, ready to cue the next phase of her pretend-perfect day, she saw Megan wasn't moving. "Megan," she said, too sharply. The girl stood there, locked in place like her feet had rooted into the manicured grass beneath the floral arch. Her fingers clenched the bouquet so tight one of the roses bent backward with a quiet snap. Her chest rose and fell in tiny, shallow breaths. Too fast, too close to a panic she'd never trained for. Karen stepped toward her, voice lowered. "We've come too far. Just walk, sweetheart. He's not coming. It's fine." Megan's eyes flicked toward her mother, and for the first time that day, they held something honest, terror. Not the spoiled kind she'd weaponized over the years. Not the bratty performance of a girl who always got her way. This was deeper, older. The terror of realizing your story doesn't have a backup plan, and now you're in front of an audience with no script. "I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the breeze rustling through the vines. Karen reached for her wrist. "Yes, you can. Just move your foot, baby. We're already here." But Megan didn't move. Not when the officiant shifted nervously on his feet. Not when the violinist restarted the song again, this time slower, trying to give her time to compose herself. Not when the murmurs turned into soft confusion across the seating rows. Because for the first time in her life, the spotlight was too hot. And the man who'd always stood behind her during her weakest moments, the one who'd carried her across the finish line every time she stumbled, was gone. Not late, not angry, gone. And in that emptiness, her reality cracked. No father to hold her arm. No fallback story. No stepdad in the shadows waiting to save her pride one more time. Just eyes. Dozens of them. Watching. Waiting for her to walk herself down the aisle into a ceremony built on a lie she helped orchestrate. But her feet wouldn't move. And somewhere, behind all the noise, she finally understood what real absence feels like. The string quartet had long since given up. Their bows rested on their laps, idle and sweating in the afternoon sun. The music had stopped, but the dissonance had only just begun. The guests, those still seated, fidgeted in slow, synchronized discomfort. Programs flapped against chests like paper fans in a southern church. A ring bearer, all of 5 years old, kicked at the gravel path with scuffed dress shoes, already bored of the adult world's version of a circus. And behind the veil of bridal perfection, whispers sharpened. "Didn't her stepdad raise her?" one of the bridesmaids said under her breath, her voice slipping between layers of hairspray and suspicion. The one beside her didn't look up from adjusting her heel. "Yeah, since she was little, right? I think he paid for everything too." "Then where the hell is he?" "He's not even here." "That's messed up." It was quiet, but not quiet enough. Karen heard it. She was just close enough. Holding a half-empty wine glass she should have abandoned an hour ago, still trying to pretend like she was in control of the narrative. But that one little exchange, casual, offhand, unintentional, cut through the air like a blade. The glass trembled, just barely. Her fingers twitched at the stem, a drop of rose catching the light before sliding down and pooling on her manicure. She didn't notice. Her ears burned red. Her cheeks flushed not from wine, but from the creeping sting of exposure. She turned to look over her shoulder, and for a moment, her eyes scanned the path, as if somehow, some way, Paul might still appear. That maybe, despite everything, he'd swoop in at the last second, fix this, hold the shame at bay like he'd always done before. But the gravel path remained empty. And that emptiness, his absence, had weight now. Presence. A volume louder than any entrance could have been. Guests felt it, saw it. They weren't asking where the biological father was anymore. They were asking where the man was who actually mattered. And Megan? Megan had sunk into herself. Her eyes glazed, bouquet now resting limp at her side. Every bit of manufactured confidence she'd strutted around with all year had crumbled. Her mascara was ruined. Her lips had gone pale. She didn't know whether to walk forward or disappear into the vines. But the guests did. They were turning. Not their bodies, just their necks, their expressions, their judgment. The groom's side of the aisle shifted in awkward half-conversations. The bride's side stared a little too long. A couple guests subtly raised phones, not for photos now, but texts, private messages, speculation. Karen reached for her phone again. One bar. No service. As if Paul had orchestrated that too. She stepped back, heels slipping slightly in the soft earth beneath the decorative carpet. Her composure was cracking. Her smile was gone. What remained was a woman realizing that while she toasted to her own cleverness over brunch, the real story had been writing itself in silence. He didn't storm out. He didn't trash the house. He didn't beg. He vanished. And somehow, that had humiliated them more than any scene he could have made. Paul's chair, meant to be in the second row, next to the aisle, right where the camera would catch him during the vows, remained empty. No name card. No jacket. Just a phantom limb of a man whose absence now screamed through the ceremony louder than the PA system ever could. And the crowd? They were no longer confused. They were starting to understand. The officiant adjusted his tie like it was choking him. He wasn't sweating from the heat, it was the silence. Thick, stretching, unnatural. Megan stood beneath the floral arch, bouquet forgotten at her side like a prop from a different play. Her veil fluttered once in the vineyard breeze and then stilled, a white flag in a war she hadn't prepared to lose. The guests had stopped whispering. No one checked their phones now. No more photos. No live streams. No #ready smiles. Just stillness. The officiant cleared his throat and tried again, voice uncertain. Who gives this woman away? It was a simple line. Memorized. Built into the script. Said 1,000 times at 1,000 weddings. But this time, it dropped into the still air like a question at a funeral. And no one answered. Megan blinked. Once. Then twice, longer, as if maybe closing her eyes could blink the world away. But it didn't. She turned her head slightly toward the chairs, expecting movement, a hand, something. But all she saw was a half-filled aisle and an empty chair where the only man who ever truly gave a damn was supposed to be sitting. He wasn't. Karen sat frozen 2 rows back. Her nails dug into the satin lining of her clutch, breath caught halfway between a sigh and a scream. The edges of her composure had frayed to ribbons. Her perfect posture was gone. She'd hunched forward instinctively, trying to shrink, to disappear before the wave of realization crashing through the audience reached her. Someone coughed. A short, sharp thing from the second row. Like a pinprick to a balloon. It echoed louder than the quartet ever did. The officiant glanced around. Panic flickered in his eyes now. He looked to Karen, to Megan, then back again. As if someone, anyone, might throw him a rope. But no rope came. No rescue. Only a sea of polite, tightening expressions, the kind you wear at a car accident when you're trying not to look too interested. Megan tried to speak. Her lips parted. Her breath caught. Nothing came out. The bouquet slipped from her hand. Hit the grass with a soft, wilted thud. Karen stood fast. Too fast. Her chair screeched back on the wooden platform. Every head turned. She didn't speak, but the motion had volume. She stepped forward as if to fix something, anything, but stopped halfway. Her eyes locked with Megan's. And in that split second, mother and daughter both realized the same terrible thing. There was nothing to fix. Because the collapse had already happened. Not in that moment, but in all the ones they ignored leading up to it. The ceremony hadn't begun with music or applause. It began with betrayal. And now it ended in silence. No father stepped forward. No proud hands passing a daughter's hand to a groom. Just a girl alone under an arch built with someone else's money, in a dress someone else paid for, on a foundation someone else quietly walked away from. The officiant finally lowered his binder. We can pause, if needed, he offered, voice barely above a whisper. Megan didn't answer. She couldn't. Her knees buckled, not into a faint, not dramatic. Just a slow, sinking tremble that ended with her sitting on the edge of the platform, head in her hands, veil slipping down over her face like a curtain mercifully closing. The audience didn't gasp. They didn't even move. They just watched. Watched it all burn down in silence. And Paul? He wasn't there. And that was louder than any vow ever spoken. The fish sizzled in the cast iron like applause that actually meant something. Crisp skin, butter, lemon, rosemary, simple, clean. No garnish, no performance. Just food and fire. Paul flipped the fillet with the kind of focus a man earns after decades of fixing other people's disasters. His hands, still calloused from years climbing poles in sleet and heat, moved steady and sure. He didn't rush. Not anymore. Outside, the lake mirrored the sky like glass. No wind, no voices. Just the distant call of loons echoing over the water and the occasional creak of the dock settling into its bones. Inside the cabin, his phone buzzed. Again. He didn't look. It was tucked inside the junk drawer, next to a half-spent roll of duct tape, 2 rusted keys he never labeled, and an old pocket knife Megan once gave him for Father's Day. 27 missed calls, last time he checked. 10 voicemails. 3 texts from numbers not saved in his contacts. 1 from Karen. The rest, he could guess. They came in waves. Probably started slow. 1 or 2 during the ceremony. Maybe a couple "where are you" messages. Then, when the cracks split wide and reality set in, the tone changed. The frequency. The desperation. He didn't care. He poured a beer into a chipped mug. Sat at the table made from reclaimed wood he sanded down himself. The cabin had no smart speakers, no Wi-Fi, no framed canvas prints with cursive words like grateful or family is everything. It had silence. And finally, it was the kind he could live with. He sipped the beer slowly, watching the sunset melt into the lake like honey over slate. Orange, red, a little violet at the edges. The kind of color no photographer could fake. His phone vibrated again. He let it. He thought about the wedding. Not with bitterness. Just curiosity. Like a man who saw a building collapse from a safe distance. Distant enough not to smell the dust or hear the screams, but close enough to know he once paid for the blueprints. They wanted a perfect day. He gave them the money, the vendors, the time, the space. What they didn't ask for was him. So he took that part back. Not loudly, not spitefully, just cleanly. Like excising a tumor with no anesthesia. It hurts, sure, but there's a purity in it. He didn't imagine them crying. He didn't fantasize about revenge or redemption. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, beer in hand, fire cracking soft under the skillet, loons crying in the distance, he felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. Not the kind people advertise. The kind that comes when no one needs you. When you don't owe anyone answers. When your absence is no longer a threat, but a completed act. He toasted the lake with a small nod, no smile. And the phone kept buzzing from the drawer. But the only sound he answered was the breeze rustling through the pines and the whisper of oil in the pan. The drawer creaked open like it didn't want to. Paul reached in without looking, fishing past paper clips and receipts until his hand closed around the cold, vibrating rectangle. He held the phone in his palm a moment, watching the screen pulse with Karen's name again. Then Megan's. Then a number with no caller ID, which he assumed was the groom, or the coordinator, or someone else trying to patch a sinking ship with borrowed words. He unlocked the phone. 32 voicemails. More texts than he bothered to count. He opened the voicemail tab. His thumb hovered over the first one. Karen, 2:46 p.m. Paul, please, I didn't mean for it to go like this. She was nervous. That's all. She panicked and said something stupid. We were wrong, okay? I see that now. I know you're hurt. Just call me back. Please. He didn't. He tapped delete. Karen, 3:17 p.m. She's falling apart. Megan's crying in the bridal suite. The photographer left. I don't know what to do. This wasn't supposed to happen. Delete. Megan, 4:02 p.m. Paul. I messed up. You were always there. I thought I needed him there too. But he didn't even show up. He didn't even call. You were the only one who ever. She trailed off. He deleted it before it ended. Unknown. 4:39 p.m. This is Kyle, Megan's fiancé. I know this is probably awkward, but it'd mean a lot to her if you could just come back. She's not doing great. We really need you. Delete. Karen, 5:14 p.m. I didn't stop her, but I never wanted this. You have to believe me. He didn't. He believed actions. Not tears spilled after the guests had gone home. He opened the message thread from Megan. The last one was timestamped 6:23 p.m. Just a single sentence. You were the only real father I had. He stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt. Not anymore. Because it was true. Cold, clean, late as hell truth. The kind that comes when the credits have already rolled and the lights are up and the theater's empty. Then he tapped delete thread. The screen cleared. Blank. Quiet. For the first time in 17 years, there were no unread messages asking him for something. No expectations. No apologies dressed as explanations. Just peace. Earned. Paid for. In full. He tossed the phone onto the couch cushion beside him and leaned back, exhaling slow. They weren't crying because he left. They were crying because they finally noticed he was gone. And for the first time, he didn't feel responsible for what came next. He didn't owe them that anymore. The photo wasn't supposed to be anything special, just a quick snap from a bored guest who'd had one too many glasses of champagne and a front row seat to a disaster. It showed Megan alone under the floral arch, veil slightly askew, eyes red, bouquet hanging like a broken limb. No father beside her, no groom yet in frame, just a girl dressed in white, holding up the illusion with both hands as it crumbled around her. The caption read, "The man who raised her wasn't invited. He paid for everything, then disappeared." It was posted at 7:42 p.m. on Facebook. By 10 p.m., it had 100 shares. By midnight, it was on Twitter. Screenshots floated to Instagram. TikToks stitched commentary over it with dramatic piano music and captions like, "When you replace the man who was always there with the one who never was." By morning, it was viral. People didn't just sympathize, they raged. Thousands of strangers from small towns and big cities and dusty corners of the internet weighed in. Stepdads like that are rare. She didn't deserve him. He paid for it all, then vanished. King. Actions speak louder. His silence said it all. Imagine being so arrogant you think a ghost of a bio dad is worth more than a man who stayed. The story took on a life of its own. Theories, threads, Reddit deep dives. Someone even found Karen's Pinterest board for the wedding and started posting sarcastic captions under every photo. Sponsored by the guy you tried to erase. Karen deleted her socials by the end of the week. Megan locked hers. But it didn't stop. The story spread the way wildfire does when no one owns a hose. It wasn't just gossip. It was a reckoning. And Paul, he didn't post a thing. No rebuttal. No clarification. No setting the record straight. He didn't need to. His absence had done more than any monologue could. Weeks later, Megan sat in the kitchen of the house Paul bought, the one she now called theirs, with a bitterness she couldn't wash off. The wedding album sat open in front of her. Pages of her pretending, smiling, stiffly posing next to a groom who now looked like an afterthought. She didn't touch her coffee. Her hair was in a bun, her nails unpolished. The eyeliner had long stopped trying. She flipped the page slowly and stopped at a shot of the ceremony. Just her and Karen, standing awkwardly before the officiant, no hand to give her away. Her lip quivered. Then came the sob. Not loud, not theatrical. Just the sound of a girl who finally understood what she'd thrown away and what never comes back once it's gone. Karen sat across from her, silent, picking at a coaster like it might unravel time if she scratched hard enough. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to say. They had burned the bridge and watched the smoke drift up without a second thought. Now they lived on the island. And Paul, somewhere, probably on the edge of a lake, windows open, wood crackling in a stove. He read none of it. He saw the messages, sure. The ones from old friends. The "did you see this?" texts. The tag posts. He opened none. He replied to no one. He didn't need the world to know his side. He'd already lived it. And now, he was living something better. Not revenge. Not redemption. Just the kind of clean, perfect silence you only earn when you walk away at the exact right moment. And never look back.